Chapter 1980. Two streaks of heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and dispelled the minor divine power of the cultivator with ease. "You're still far from being able to take my life." Su Zimo's tone was indifferent, and his movement technique was extremely fast. He arrived in the blink of an eye and slapped the top of the cultivator's head with a flip of his palm. Bang! The person shuddered and his gaze was blank. Although he did not seem to be injured on the surface, his mind was shattered by Su Zimo's palm strike, and his essence spirit was destroyed. That was what Su Zimo said before he attacked. Even if he wanted to kill you openly, you wouldn't be able to defend against it. Jian Yu and the rest had fought their way out of the Tin Extremes prison. As for Su Zimo, he was completely unknown on the hunt list. Therefore, everyone did not take Su Zimo seriously in the depths of their hearts. After Su Zimo killed 3 people, the other cultivators did not retreat at all. Instead, they were riled up and swarmed forward under Jian Yu's command. Dozens of mystic immortals attacked at the same time. It was quite a commotion. All sorts of minor divine powers, immortal arts and secret skills were formed and essence chi surged. Poof! A bolt of lightning flashed in the crowd. One of them had just leaped into the air when his body froze, and a hole the size of an arm appeared in his chest. It was charred and was emitting green smoke. That person's chest was penetrated by the power of thunder. Ah! That person shrieked tragically and fell from the sky. Even if his essence spirit was not destroyed, his body was severely injured, and his life force was severed. His essence spirit would not be able to last for long. Behind him, Tang Zi's figure disappeared in a flash. Some of the cultivators wanted to track Tang Zi, but realized that they could not track her at all. His spirit consciousness could not lock onto Tang Zi's location at all. Even Su Zimo's divine sense, which was at the level of an earth deity, could not lock onto Tang Zi. Back when the two of them fought in the cave, the main reason why Su Zimo was able to gain the upper hand and suppress Tang Zi was because of his spirit perception and True Dragon's 9 flashes. Chi. Su Zimo's expression was indifferent as he flicked his finger gently. Hundreds of heaven-slaying sword chi burst forth and splattered in all directions with killing intent. He was already at the 9th level of the mystic origin stage. Relying on Qinglian's true body, even under the same cultivation level, his vital chi was many times purer and more condensed than other cultivators. Therefore, just the killing power of a single strand of sword chi was enough to break a secret technique. If Su Zimo were to truly release thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi, it would be devastating and not many cultivators around the lake would be able to survive. In the distance, Yunting looked at this scene and nodded slightly. The heaven-slaying sword technique has not been forgotten in this person's hands. When the heavens emit killing intent, the stars are shifted. It is indeed extraordinary. A cultivator behind Yunting said with a smile. No matter how strong this person's heaven-slaying sword art is, he can't compare to your highness human-slaying sword art. Of course, Yunting had a proud expression. Even if this person grasps the heaven and earth-slaying sword arts, he won't be able to match the sharpness of my human-slaying sword art, let alone a single heaven-slaying sword art. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Leave something as such to us. Another person said in a deep voice. When this person is exhausted, we'll head forward and capture him alive to hand him over to your highness. There's no need. Yunting replied indifferently. I'll snatch the heaven-slaying sword art back personally. Your highness, he's just a servant. Why must you? Before that person could finish, Yunting waved his hand and interrupted him. Who do you think I am? Yunting glared at that person. If he wants the heaven-slaying sword art, I'll naturally attack him openly. I, Yunting, will not take advantage of others and bully others with numbers. The other cultivators lowered their heads and did not dare to say anything else. On the other side, in the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, Fang Xian's battle intent surged as though he could not hold it in any longer. He asked in a deep voice, Exalted Immortal, let me attack. I'll definitely be able to kill this person with lightning speed and retrieve the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. Let's wait a little longer. There's no hurry, the old man with the surname Gu said. This lad has some tricks up his sleeves. These dozens of cultivators are not a match for him either. You'll only be confident if you attack after he's exhausted for a while. Fang Xian took a deep breath of air and continued watching the battle. On the battlefield, Su Zimo released the heaven-slaying sword art and dispelled all sorts of mystic skills with a flick of his fingers. Relying on the heaven's feet and the earth-traversing golden light, he shuttled through the crowd with ease. His seemingly simple punches and kicks contained terrifying explosive power. Even if Qinglian's true body did not use her bloodline and merely relied on her physical strength, she could take on Khanate mystic-grade dermic treasures head-on. Cultivators could not use dermic treasures or weapons in the Emperor's tomb, and Su Zimo was a humanoid Khanate mystic-grade dermic treasure. Who could defend against him? Bang! 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 As though he was taking a stroll, Su Zimo charged left and right and nobody could stop him. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the dozens of mystic immortals were killed by him. A small portion of them died in the chaos. Even in death, they did not know who had killed them. This was the first time Su Zimo and Tang Zi had truly joined forces, but they had great chemistry with each other. Su Zimo fought with dozens of cultivators head-on on the battlefield. Tang Zi, on the other hand, used her unpredictable movement technique and concealment technique to blend into the crowd. She would occasionally appear and rarely attack. However, every time she attacked, a cultivator would definitely die. Neither of them was on the hunting list, but now they had killed most of the cultivators on the hunting list. There were not many left. The remaining few people finally felt fear and retreated one after another. However, at this moment, the cultivators from the various sects and factions who were originally watching also surged towards this place like a tidal wave. Most of them were from some small sects and factions. Previously, the fat and thin old men were probably from the Great Gene Celestial Kingdom and were considered exalted immortals. No matter how bold they would not dare to attack. However, now that the fat and thin old men were dead, Su Zimo and the rest were only mystic immortals from the lower world. Moreover, they were the murderers of the fat and thin old men. Many cultivators took this opportunity to rush forward, wanting to seize the 7 Dawn immortal ginseng in the chaos. In the distance, Elder Ge laughed strangely and said, "With so many people rushing forward, even if that Su Zimo has 3 heads and 6 arms, it will be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Fang Xian, get ready. Listen to my command and attack at any time." "Yes, sir," Fang Xian replied in a low voice. On the other side, a cultivator from the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom frowned and said, "Your Highness, I'm afraid that Su Zimo is doomed." Yun Ting kept his hands behind his back and remained silent. On the battlefield, Su Zimo faced the cultivators rushing towards him from all directions without any fear. In fact, there was not even a ripple in his eyes. "Hey, let's retreat first. We can't fight head-on." Tang Zi's voice rang in Su Zimo's mind. "You go first. Be careful," Su Zimo replied. If it were outside, many cultivators might have some Dharma treasures or trump cards, and he might be a little wary. However, in the Emperor's tomb, Su Zimo was confident that he could defeat everyone with just his physical body, immortal arts, and divine abilities. Moreover, the Emperor's tomb's environment was complicated, and every step was filled with danger. If he encountered some unknown creatures in the Emperor's tomb while retreating, he might be in danger. Chapter 1981. Hand over the immortal ginseng. How can you keep such a supreme treasure to yourself? Some of the cultivators did not hide their intentions and hollered. Many cultivators swarmed over aggressively. Even though they could not use any Dharma treasures or weapons, the simultaneous descent of many mystic powers and secret skills was earth-shattering and terrifying. Suddenly, a sharp howl sounded from the crowd. It was extremely ear-piercing and pierced through metal and rocks, as though it could tear apart the eardrums of many cultivators. That was the immortal whale sound. Tang Zi did not leave. The cultivators around Tang Zi shuddered, and their ears hurt as blood spewed out of their mouths. Even the cultivators who were further away were shocked. The mystic powers and secret skills that they had just condensed became unstable and swayed slightly. Legend has it that the bloodline of the taboo Kuan Peng flowed in the immortal whale's body. With its massive body, its wail sound would be extremely lethal. Tang Zi stood in the air and howled into the skies. A gigantic immortal whale seemed to have appeared above her head, swimming in the waves and slapping the water surface, creating massive waves as it let out whale sounds continuously. The immortal whale sound seemed to have materialized. With Tang Zi as the center, it shook the void and spread in all directions. Roar! Right then, another strange roar sounded from not far away. It was mighty, as though thousands of elephants were trumpeting at the same time, shaking the heavens and earth. Yunting glanced sideways. Far away, a black-robed man from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom leaped into the air. His black hair danced wildly as he roared in Tang Zi's direction. That was Fang Xian. Thousands of gigantic elephants vaguely appeared beneath Fang Xian's feet. They swung their trunks and pierced their tusks into the skies as they trumpeted. If the immortal whale was the overlord of the ocean, the divine elephants were the gods of the land. The immortal whale sound and myriad elephants trumpeting were two sound domain secret skills that clashed in midair. Neither of them was willing to back down. Although it was difficult to determine who was superior between the two sound domain secret skills. However, because of Fang Xian's attack, the cultivators who were surrounding Su Zimo were invigorated and were freed from the pain of the immortal whale sound. Interesting. Yun Ting had been watching from afar, not intending to make a move. However, at this moment, the collision of the two great sound domain secret arts caused his bloodline to become somewhat restless, unable to calm down. I didn't expect to meet some decent opponents in the Mystic Yuan realm. Yun Ting let out a hearty laugh. He pinched his fingers together and slashed down in the direction of the battlefield. He shouted 3 times in a row, "Break! Break! Break!" Yun Ting's voice was a lot weaker than the immortal whale roar and the 10,000 mammoths' simultaneous roar. However, his 3 shouts had formed 3 long swords in the air. They were sharp and full of killing intent. Condensing swords with sound. Such natural talent in the sword Dao was truly shocking and beyond imagination. Even Fang Xian had a grave expression as he withdrew the contempt in his eyes. Originally, he really didn't think much of Yun Ting. But only at this moment did he realize that this was an extremely formidable opponent. The 3 sound swords tore through the air, not fearing the confrontation between the immortal whale roar and 10,000 elephants roar in unison as they descended from the sky. Whoosh! It was as though a piece of cloth was torn apart by a sharp weapon. The 2 sound domains of the immortal whale roar and 10,000 mammoths' simultaneous roar were split into 2 by Yun Ting's 3 sound swords. Su Zimo's eyes shone with a ferocious glint. Initially, he did not intend to use the Dragon Roar secret skill. That was one of his trump cards. He would not use it unless he had no other choice. However, at this moment, the 3 sound domain secret skills descended at the same time and collided in his ears, causing the Qinglian bloodline in his body to boil and gush out. If he continued holding on, the Qinglian bloodline would be exposed. Furthermore, there was a hint of pride in the depths of Su Zimo's heart. He wanted to compete with the paragons of the world. "All of you get lost," Su Zimo said slowly. At the last word, he burst forth with the Dragon Roar secret skill. Instantly the world quaked. A divine dragon with shimmering green scales appeared beside Su Zimo. Its horns were towering, and it was dignified as it coiled up and roared into the skies. This mystical dragon was extremely lifelike. As it roared, its whiskers danced, and the scales on its body stood up slightly. Its entire body swelled up by a large size. That dragon roar was way too terrifying, and seemed to contain a supreme will. Suddenly, the immortal whale in midair leaped and dove into the sea, vanishing. Under the control of Su Zimo's will, the Dragon Roar secret skill had the least impact on Tang Zi. As for the 10,000 mammoths beneath Fang Xian's feet, all of them shattered and dissipated into the world against the reverberation of the dragon roar. Fang Xian's body swayed slightly, but he stabilized himself before long. The 3 sound swords lasted for a little longer, but they shattered and turned into nothingness as well. The Dragon Roar secret skill was a fusion of many secret skills, such as Thunderclap Kill, Dragon Phoenix Roar and Azure Dragon Roar. Every single sound domain secret skill was enough to sweep through all those of the same cultivation realm individually. It was naturally imaginable how terrifying the might of those secret skills could be when they were fused together. When the Dragon Roar secret skill was released, the world went silent, and everything went silent. Dragon Roar technique? Yunting did not move at all, as he narrowed his gaze and murmured softly. However, he shook his head before long. That's not right. There seems to be other dermic formulations within that sound domain secret skill. There's also the power of thunder. Be it Fangxian or Yunting, they were rather far away to begin with. Coupled with their strong qi blood physique, Su Zimo's Dragon Roar secret skill did not affect them at all. However, on the battlefield, many cultivators who attacked Su Zimo were in trouble. First, they were baptized by the immortal whale roar. Immediately after, they were struck by the myriad elephant roar. Thereafter, it was Yunting's 3 sound swords. Most of the cultivators on the battlefield could not withstand the descent of those 3 sound domain secret skills. The Dragon Roar secret skill was even more terrifying. The moment it was released, some of the cultivators closest to Su Zimo exploded and died on the spot. The bodies and bloodlines of those cultivators were severely injured by the 3 sound domain secret skills. If they had retreated in time, they might have been able to recover. However, the Dragon Roar secret skill was like a violent storm that destroyed them instantly. Some of the cultivators that were further away fell from midair one after another. Some of them fell limply to the ground with bloodstains on their faces. They looked frightening, and were almost destroyed by the power of the Dragon Roar secret skill. Before the mystic powers and secret skills in midair could descend, they were destroyed by the 4 sound domain secret skills. Those that could enter the Emperor's tomb were all mystic essence experts that were carefully selected. However, it was only when they truly fought that many cultivators realized that the difference between them was like the difference between clouds and mud, even though they were both at grade 9 mystic immortal. Fangxian's eyes surged with battle intent as he strode towards Su Zimo. There were 4 cultivators, 3 men and 1 woman. They split into 4 directions and surrounded Su Zimo. After the 4 sound domain secret skills, there were not many cultivators who still had the strength to fight. This showed how powerful the 3 men and 1 woman were. Be careful. They're from the 4 major immortal sects. Tang Zi's voice rang in Su Zimo's mind. Chapter 1982. Su Zimo did not know much about the 4 major immortal sects. This was the first time he had heard of them during the battle on Longyuan planet. In the heaven world, the sects were divided into 3 levels: mystic, earthly and heavenly. Normally, those who ascended from the lower world would not even have the chance to enter a mystic sect. The 4 major immortal sects were heavenly sects on the Divine Cloud continent. One could only imagine how powerful they were. One of the 3 men was bald, fat, and looked like a monk. The other was tan, tall, and had short hair. He looked like a walking iron tower made of iron. The third was a middle-aged man. He wore a Taoist hat, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. The last woman was wearing a blue dress. Her lips were scarlet, and there was even a tinge of purplish green. She looked a little scary. The fact that the 4 of them could withstand the impact of the 4 sound domain secret techniques was enough to prove their strength. Although Su Zimo was confident that he could defeat opponents of the same level as him, he did not dare to be careless. He let out a long roar, and his aura surged. On the other side, a flustered figure was stumbling toward Yunting. It was Jinyu, who had just escaped death. Tang Zi, Fangxian, and Yunting's sound domain secret techniques were already the limit of what he could withstand. Su Zimo's Dragon Roar secret technique was unleashed. His blood flowed backward, and his organs were shaken. He almost died on the spot. Your Highness, save me. Although Jinyu did not know Yunting, he recognized the token on Yunting's waist. That was an item that only those with the royal bloodline of the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom were qualified to wear. Before Jinyu could reach Yunting, he had already shouted for help. Yunting looked indifferent. He glanced at Jinyu and said, "He didn't even care about you. If you didn't provoke him, you wouldn't have gotten yourself killed." Your Highness, you're kind. I didn't know that this person was so ruthless and unscrupulous. He even dared to kill the exalted immortal by Duke Yuanzua's side. What else can he not do? Jinyu was indignant. He said hatefully, "When I return to the great Jin celestial kingdom, I'll definitely report this to Duke Yuanzua." Yunting sneered and suddenly attacked without warning. Jinyu was injured. Even if he was at his best, he would not be able to stop Yunting's attack. "Your Highness, you." Jinyu was held by Yunting by the back of his neck. His entire body was suspended in the air like a chick that had been caught. His expression was one of panic as he struggled helplessly. Yunting said calmly, "I hate snitches the most. You don't deserve to use a sword." As soon as he finished speaking, Yunting clasped 2 fingers together and chopped down. Puchi! A bloody head was chopped off by Yunting's 2 fingers. His sword fingers were even sharper than a real sword. On the other side, the people of the 4 major celestial sects were also fighting Su Zimo. The bald monk was the first to arrive. He laughed heartily and said, "Benefactor, let me send you to heaven." The bald monk swung his arms, which seemed to be covered with a thick layer of gold foil. They flickered with light and smashed down toward Su Zimo. These 2 arms were like 2 thick and hard rods. They were powerful, heavy and extremely ferocious. Following closely behind, the Iron Towering Man also approached. He stood tall, and was half a body taller than Su Zimo. Bang! The Iron Towering Man's roar was like a clap of thunder. He stretched out his arm, clenched it into a fist, and punched towards Su Zimo's head from above. The Iron Towering Man's clenched fist was like a black iron hammer. It had sharp edges, and was filled with a metallic luster. Be it the bald monk or the Iron Towering Man, both of them were body-tempering experts. Their physical bodies were shockingly strong. On the other side, the middle-aged Taoist priest waved his wide sleeves and shouted, "Freeze!" It was a minor mystique, the immobilization spell. The immobilization spell was one of the most common minor mystiques. When understood to the extreme, it could evolve into a peerless mystique, the space freeze. Although the immobilization spell was common, everyone's primordial spirit was different in terms of purity, cultivation realm, and strength. Therefore, the effects of the immobilization spell were different. Su Zimo's primordial spirit had already reached earthly origin realm, which was a realm higher than cultivators of the same level. Therefore, the immobilization spell was completely ineffective against him. The middle-aged Taoist priest was from one of the 4 major immortal sects. However, the middle-aged Taoist priest had a backup plan. The moment he released the fixed body art, his 2 wide sleeves arrived instantly and wrapped around Su Zimo tightly a few times. The immobilization spell was only the first move. The next move was the killing move. The last one was the woman in the blue dress. Although she was the slowest, her 10 long fingernails were purple-green in color and emitted a foul smell. Deadly poison. The woman in blue reached out with her sharp fingernails that resembled 10 poisonous swords, grabbing towards Su Zimo's body. The powerful cultivators of the 4 major immortal sects attacked at the same time, although the 4 of them had never met before, and this was the first time they had worked together. Their cooperation was perfect. This was the tacit understanding between the top cultivators. Seeing this, Yunting nodded slightly and said softly, "Although the 4 of them are just servants of the 4 major immortal sects, their skills are indeed not weak. I'm afraid only I can neutralize such an attack." On the battlefield, Tang Zi's heart skipped a beat when she saw this. With her eyesight, she could naturally see how terrifying the joint attack of the powerful cultivators of the 4 major immortal sects was. At the very least, it would be difficult for her to escape unscathed if she was in Su Zimo's position. Tang Zi's figure moved. She concealed her figure and sneaked toward the middle-aged Taoist priest. As long as she could kill one of them, the remaining 3 would be much easier. "Hee, where are you going?" At this moment, a cold laugh came from the side. Following that, Tang Zi felt a gust of wind blowing by her ear. It was so strong that it hurt her ears. What was even more terrifying was that this person had blocked all of Tang Zi's escape routes. An expert, Tang Zi did not dare to be careless. She quickly stopped and dodged the other party's killing move. A man in black blocked her path. It was Feng Xian from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom. Tang Zi frowned slightly. It would be difficult to determine the winner in a short time if the two of them fought head-on. However, this delay allowed Su Zimo to fall into the torrential attacks of the four powerful cultivators on the other side of the battlefield. Su Zimo's gaze was like a torch as he took a deep breath. His chest puffed up, and he seemed to have transformed into an anaconda that could devour the sun and moon. That was a secret skill from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Ching! Instantly, Su Zimo's sleeves were ripped apart and turned into countless rags that fell to the ground. The middle-aged Taoist priest was stunned. He had killed countless paragons with this move of his. To think that it would be countered so easily today. Scram! The massive amount of essence chi accumulated in Su Zimo's chest burst forth suddenly as he roared. Su Zimo released the great chaos essence palm with his left hand, and it seemed like a gigantic millstone that crushed towards the bald monk's arms. At the same time, he swiped his right hand across his chest and clenched it into a fist. His flesh expanded, and he formed a gigantic seal that smashed against the iron fist of the towering man. Boom! With a loud bang, the bald monk's expression changed drastically. He quickly retreated. The golden foil on his arms had been shattered by the great chaos essence palm. Bang! The two fists collided. Flesh and blood collided and bones scraped against each other. The towering man's black face quickly turned red. Ah! The towering man roared. He looked like he was in pain as he took 3 steps back. Chapter 1983. The Iron Towering Man took 3 steps back, each step leaving a deep footprint on the ground. In the blink of an eye, 3 of the experts of the 4 major immortal sects had retreated. At the same time, the blue-dress woman's killing move descended as well. Su Zimo did not turn back at all. As though he had eyes on the back of his head, he clasped his fingers together to form a sword art and slashed behind him. Chi, condensing the heaven-slaying sword art. At least 100 streams of sword chi surged out at the same time and gathered into a long sword. Sensing the terror of the long sword, the blue-dress woman's expression changed starkly. She stopped in her tracks hurriedly and retreated. She wanted to stop, but was still half a step too late. Clang! 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 The sound of metal clashing could be heard. All 10 of the blue-dress woman's fingernails were severed at the waist by the heaven-slaying sword chi. Pieces of fingernails scattered on the ground with a purplish-green poisonous glint. Against the encirclement of the experts of the 4 major immortal sects, Su Zimo counterattacked forcefully and forced all 4 of them to retreat. On the other side, Tang Zi, who was already fighting with Fang Xian, was relieved for the time being. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo laughed and looked at the 4 of them disdainfully. Not bad. You guys are quite capable to be able to escape unscathed from me. How arrogant. The middle-aged Tao master's expression darkened as he hollered. On the other hand, the bald monk and the other 3 remained silent. Their expressions were somewhat ugly. Su Zimo's words were indeed ear-piercing and arrogant. However, the 3 of them knew that Su Zimo's words were not false at all. The moment the bald monk collided with the great chaos essence palm, he sensed that something was amiss and retreated in time to avoid being injured. If he had retreated any slower, both of his arms might have been smashed into a pulp by the great chaos essence palm. The reason why the towering man could withstand Su Zimo's punch was because he had a secret technique that transferred the power of his opponent's attack into the ground through his body. That was the reason why his 3 steps left such deep footprints on the ground. The blue-dress woman was even more dangerous. She was proficient in the Tao of poison and the power of her bloodline. She was far inferior to the bald monk and the iron towering man. She was even weaker than Su Zimo. If she had dodged slightly slower earlier on, both her arms would have been severed by the heaven-slaying sword chi. The 4 of them were from the 4 major immortal sects. But if a cultivator could enter an immortal sect, even if they were the most lowly and lowly of servants, they should still far surpass their peers. They did not expect to meet such a ruthless person in the monarch tomb. On the other side, Yin Ting's expression became somewhat complicated. Earlier, he had only said that he could resolve the siege of the 4 of them. Unexpectedly, not only did Su Zimo neutralize the attack, he even counterattacked and almost injured the 4 major celestial sects. On the other side, Tang Zi and Fang Xian continued to fight, and it was hard to determine the victor. Although Tang Zi cultivated the Tao of assassination, her physique and bloodline were extraordinary. Her foundation was extremely solid. Even if she fought against any heaven's favorites, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage. The more Fang Xian fought, the more shocked he became. He had ascended after transcending the 49 heavenly tribulations, and was invincible in the lower world. Even when he ascended to the upper world, he had not encountered any opponents. Originally, he thought that perhaps only Yin Ting, Su Zimo, and the 4 major celestial sex experts could threaten him. He did not take Tang Zi seriously at all. He did not expect that this ordinary-looking woman in front of him would be so troublesome and terrifying. Her attacks were unpredictable, and all of them were killing moves. There were a few times when she almost injured him severely. Where did she come from? Fang Xian cursed in his heart. At that moment, a jade-green light suddenly burst forth from the distant horizon. It soared into the sky but soon disappeared. Many cultivators were shocked and fell into deep thought. Su Zimo also saw the green light. Could it be a jade talisman? No one had any clues about the jade talisman. Now that this green light suddenly appeared, it immediately made everyone think. After a short silence, cultivators quickly moved and sped in the direction of the jade talisman. Your Highness, what should we do? A cultivator in the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom asked softly. Let's go over there and take a look first. I'm determined to get the jade talisman and the human-slaying sword art. Yin Ting pondered for a while and said, let's find the jade talisman first. Su Zimo will not be lost. After a pause, Yin Ting smiled and said, in my opinion, no one in the Tharch tomb can stop him except for me. Your Highness, you seem to think highly of him? Someone behind Yin Ting understood the meaning behind his words. Yin Ting nodded slightly and said, this person is very talented and cultivates the human-slaying sword art. He's somewhat fated with me. However, he ascended from the lower world. It'll be difficult for him to stand out in the great Jin Celestial Kingdom. Only by following me can he become famous in the 9 heavens. That cultivator smiled and said, in the upper world, there's almost no one like Your Highness who treats all cultivators in the lower world equally. If Your Highness can recruit this person, it'll be his fortune. Yin Ting shook his head and said with a smile, that might not be the case. People with such talent and battle prowess are all monstrous geniuses. They're proud and arrogant, so it'll be difficult to recruit them. I have to defeat him and convince him wholeheartedly before I can take him under my wing. After saying that, Yin Ting glanced at Su Zimo again and led the cultivators of the Zishuan Celestial Kingdom in the direction of the green light. Fang Xian, don't bother about that woman. Go and find the jade talisman first. Don't let anyone take the initiative. Elder Ji's voice rang in Fang Xian's mind. Bang! On the battlefield, Fang Xian clashed with Tang Zi and retreated. He shook off the lightning on his fist and said with a cold smile, I'm not going to play with you anymore. Let's fight again next time. You'll be dead next time. Tang Zi said indifferently. Haha. Fang Xian laughed. You want to kill me? You're too weak. After saying that, Fang Xian turned around and returned to Elder Ji's side. He left with the people of the Flaming Sun Celestial Kingdom. The cultivators of the 4 major celestial sects, who were confronting Su Zimo, also wanted to retreat. The mission given to them by their sects was to find the jade talisman, not the 7 Dawn celestial ginseng. If they continued to fight with Su Zimo here, they would lose a lot for a small gain. Even if they managed to get the 7 Dawn celestial ginseng, they wouldn't be punished when they returned. At the thought of this, the cultivators of the 4 major celestial sects looked at each other and retreated at the same time. They quickly left with the other cultivators of their sections. Tang Zi came to Su Zimo's side. More than 100 people from the great Jin Celestial Kingdom had entered the Emperor's tomb. Now, only the 2 of them were left. It seems like everyone has the same goal. We're all after the jade talisman. Su Zimo murmured. Tang Zi nodded as a silent agreement. Su Zimo frowned. I wonder what's the secret of the jade talisman that so many sects are after it. In the eyes of these sects, it's even more important than the 7 Dawn celestial ginseng. Tang Zi said. Only someone with a high status like Yin Ting would know such a secret. Let's go and take a look, Su Zimo said in a deep voice. Even without the Duke of Yuan's arrangement, he wanted to see what the jade talisman looked like, and what secrets it hid. Tang Zi didn't say anything. She just followed Su Zimo silently. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1984. Su Zimo and Tang Zi followed the traces of the cultivators and sped along. After walking for about half a day, they saw a huge building in the sky ahead. This should be a palace. Although it was dilapidated, looking from afar, they could still feel its grandeur. There were some cultivators wandering around the palace, as if they were looking for something. Most of the cultivators had already entered the main hall. Su Zimo and Tang Zi approached the palace and took a quick look, but they could not see anything special about it. The two of them did not waste time outside and entered the palace. In front of them was a huge and spacious square, paved with bluestone. There were several stone paths that separated the herb gardens. However, there were no more immortal herbs in these herb gardens, only some withered leaves. Even the soil in these herb gardens was corroded by the Emperor's tomb's curse and had a strange green color. This square was huge. Even with Su Zimo's eyesight, he could not see the boundaries of the square. The two of them followed the stone path, passed through the herb gardens, and continued forward. Along the way, they met some cultivators walking around the square. This palace is probably one of the immortal emperor's palaces back then. I wonder if there are any treasures? There must be treasures. Unfortunately, they have been corroded by the curse for countless years and are all useless. I heard that the side halls on the left and right have some rare treasures, elixirs, weapons, and dharma treasures. It's a pity that none of them are usable. If that's not the case, every blade of grass, every tree, every brick, and every tile in this palace would be incredible treasures. Anyway, we can't enter the main hall for the time being. Let's continue looking. If we're lucky and find some treasures, we'll have profited. Su Zimo's ears twitched and vaguely heard whispers from around the square. The cultivators outside the palace were probably trying their luck to find some treasures. However, he did not know why they said that they could not enter the main hall for the time being. Su Zimo and Tang Zi continued forward. Not long after, they finally passed through the entire square. At the end of the square stood the main hall of the palace. Thousands of cultivators were gathered in front of the main hall. All of them were staring at the gate of the main hall. Some of them were even discussing in hushed tones. Su Zimo and Shermu stepped forward to take a look. They saw that the floor of the main hall's entrance was engraved with dense and complex patterns, flickering with a faint light. It's a formation, Tang Zi said in a low voice. Su Zimo nodded and stared at the array in front of the main hall for a while, feeling a little dizzy. This array was too complicated. With his attainments in array formations, he could not solve it at all. However, at this moment, a young man was standing at the edge of the array in front of the main hall. This person had a confident expression and was in high spirits. Sometimes he would stop and ponder, sometimes he would quicken his pace, and sometimes he would flick out strands of origin chi into the grand formation. This person was the young duke of the Zixian Immortal Kingdom, Yin Ting. Every time Yin Ting attacked, the formation would shake slightly, and the formation runes would flicker. Furthermore, the light of this grand array was clearly gradually dimming. Yin Ting was trying to break the formation. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before this grand array was broken. Su Zimo could sense that this Yin Ting was very strong. In fact, he could even smell a trace of danger from this person. Even if this person had a noble status and unlimited resources, cultivating to the 9th level of the mystic essence realm at the age of 200 was truly terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that this person's attainments in array formations were so profound as well. One had to know that there was a limit to a person's strength. Even if one were to cultivate diligently for more than 200 years, they might not be able to reach the 9th level of the mystic essence realm. Furthermore, this person had to split his attention to cultivate the Tao of array formations. Why must we go through the entrance of the main hall? Is there no other entrance? This main hall is dilapidated and on the verge of collapse. I'm afraid it can't even withstand a single punch from me. A cultivator in the crowd muttered. Fufu. A scoff sounded from the side. You can go ahead and give it a try. The main hall is surrounded by restrictions. You'll definitely die if you barge in. Do you see those corpses? That's the outcome. Instantly, the person who spoke first withered and did not dare to make a sound. Breaking formations takes a huge toll on one's essence spirit. That royal king sure is bold. He's not afraid of being exhausted and encountering danger. What's his status? Almost everyone in the emperor's tomb is of lowly status. Who would dare to fight him? Furthermore, even if his essence spirit is exhausted, he should be able to dominate all those of the same cultivation realm and be invincible. In the crowd, Fang Xian watched everything coldly and curled his lips slightly. That person is young after all. He's way too conceited and doesn't know how to restrain himself. Su Zimo watched for a moment before leaving the crowd. Where are you going? Tang Zi asked. Su Zimo replied. This formation is hard to break in a short period of time. I intend to check out the side halls on both sides. I'm not going. Tang Zi did not move. She wanted to charge into the main hall the moment the formation was broken, so that she could gain the upper hand. Su Zimo nodded and turned to head towards the side hall. There were no restrictions on this side hall, and the door was wide open. It was a mess inside. It was clear that many cultivators had ransacked it. Initially, there were many divine weapons and dharma treasures placed in this side hall. Sabers, spears, swords, halberds, bells, tripods, cauldrons, mirrors. There were ordinary weapons and exotic dharma treasures. Everything was there. However, at that moment, most of the divine weapons and dharma treasures were scattered all over the ground. To be precise, those were no longer divine weapons and dharma treasures. Under the corrosion of the curse of the emperor's tomb, those divine weapons and dharma treasures had long been reduced to a pile of scrap metal. In fact, those divine weapons and dharma treasures were not of high grades to begin with. At the very least, they were not at the level of spirit-channeling dharma treasures. That was because the hell-suppressing cauldron was still refining the molten metal in the cauldron without any activity. There were still some cultivators loitering in this side hall, looking for treasures that were left behind. Some of the cultivators even fought one another because of a broken sword. Su Zimo searched carefully and found nothing. He then walked towards the side hall on the opposite side. While the side hall earlier on stored divine weapons and dharma treasures, this side hall originally stored elixirs and miraculous medicines. The medicine cabinets in the side hall were all over the ground, and the bottles and jars on them were scattered all over the ground as well. The stoppers of many of the medicine bottles were pulled open, and the elixirs within rolled out. Su Zimo picked up a random elixir and twisted it gently with his finger, turning it into ashes. After countless years, the medicinal power and spirit qi within had long dissipated. Even if there were elixirs that were perfectly preserved, they would be tainted with the curse of the emperor's tomb. If they were swallowed, it would be no different from suicide. Su Zimo circled around the side hall. After finding nothing, he prepared to leave. Just as he passed by a dilapidated wall, the hell-suppressing cauldron vibrated. Chapter 1985. Su Zimo paused in his tracks and frowned slightly. There were elixirs and elixirs in this side hall. Why would the hell-suppressing tripod have such a reaction? The hell-suppressing tripod had always only devoured spirit treasures and had never been interested in elixirs. Furthermore, the elixirs here were tainted by the curse and had long lost their medicinal properties. They were of no value. However, the abnormality in his consciousness was extremely obvious and could not be an illusion. To be precise, it was even greater than the reaction of the hell-suppressing tripod when it encountered a spirit treasure. Su Zimo began searching carefully beneath the ruins. Beneath his feet was a pile of dust and debris that buried a pile of useless items. All sorts of elixirs were mixed in the mud and were almost indistinguishable. Su Zimo bent down and searched carefully. This area wasn't big, but there was a lot of junk. There were broken stone tables, abandoned bronze lamps, and many broken pots and porcelain pieces. Su Zimo searched for a long time, but could not find anything worthy of the attention of the hell-suppressing tripod. After pondering for a moment, His gaze shifted back to the bronze lamp from before. The bronze lamp had a simple design and was extremely common. There was nothing exquisite about it, and it was mostly buried in the mud. It should have been an ordinary illumination item that was embedded into the walls of this side hall. Furthermore, the exposed parts of the bronze lamp were covered in a layer of green spots. It was clear that it was corroded by the curse of the emperor's tomb. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not pay much attention to the bronze lamp when he first caught sight of it, and swept his gaze past it. At this moment, he approached the antique bronze lamp and bent down, wanting to pull the antique bronze lamp out of the ground. As soon as his finger made contact with the ancient bronze lamp, his body trembled, and his mind went blank. Suddenly, a strong and strange suction force burst forth from the bronze lamp. Su Zimo felt as though his essence spirit in his consciousness was about to leave his body and enter the bronze lamp. The creation lotus platform sensed danger and shone brightly. Instantly, streams of jade green light burst forth from the 81 lotus holes and turned into thin threads that wrapped around Su Zimo's essence spirit and fixed it on the lotus platform. Even so, the suction force was still extremely strong. Pang, pang, pang. After a short stalemate, the green threads on Su Zimo's essence spirit were all severed. Even the lotus platform of creation could not withstand this power. Suddenly, in Su Zimo's sea of consciousness, there was a vast sound of Sanskrit. There were actually many phantoms of Buddhas that appeared, chanting Buddhist scriptures loudly. The content of the sutra was precisely the Prajna Nirvana Sutra. Around Su Zimo's primordial spirit, Sanskrit characters appeared one after another, glittering with golden light, dignified and mysterious, forming a Sanskrit barrier. Strangely enough, after the phantoms of the Buddhas appeared and the Buddhist scriptures rang out, the strange suction force gradually weakened, and the attack was not as strong as before. However, the Prajna Nirvana Sutra was incomplete. After the Buddhas chanted for a while, their voices stopped. The golden Sanskrit characters around them also faded rapidly. The suction force from the ancient bronze lamp increased once again. Su Zimo's consciousness had already regained a brief moment of clarity. He hurriedly retracted his palm and took half a step back with a shocked expression. What was that ancient bronze lamp? It nearly devoured his primordial spirit. Even the lotus platform of creation could not protect him. If not for the fact that he had cultivated half of the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and caused the phantoms of the Buddhas to appear to chant the sutra, he might have died without knowing why. This thing was truly sinister and could not be touched at all. Su Zimo waved his sleeves and wiped away the mud around the ancient bronze lamp, gradually revealing its true appearance. Su Zimo's gaze froze as he looked at the lower half of the ancient bronze lamp that was buried in the mud and frowned slightly. The part of the ancient bronze lamp that was exposed to the outside was covered in green spots, but the part that was buried was dark yellow in color, without a single green spot. Everything in the emperor's tomb was corroded by the curse, and the soil beneath his feet was not spared either. Logically speaking, even if the ancient bronze lamp was buried in the soil, it should have been corroded by the curse of the emperor's tomb. However, the situation of the ancient bronze lamp was rather strange. Su Zimo stared at the green spots on the ancient bronze lamp for a while, and gradually discovered something amiss. If he was not wrong, the green spots on the ancient bronze should not be caused by the curse of the emperor's tomb, but a type of copper rust. In other words, the ancient bronze lamp was not corroded by the curse after being in the emperor's tomb for countless years. In the emperor's tomb, even spirit dermic treasures could not withstand the corrosion of the emperor's tomb's curse. Up till now, Su Zimo's hell-suppressing tripod was the only one that was not tainted by the emperor's tomb's curse. In other words, the ancient bronze lamp was definitely better than a spirit dermic treasure. There was a high chance that it was a pure young spirit treasure, or grotto heaven spirit treasure. At that thought, Su Zimo was secretly delighted. If that was the case, there was a chance that the fourth wall of the hell-suppressing tripod could be repaired after devouring and refining the ancient bronze lamp. Su Zimo looked around, and when he realized that there was no one else in the side hall, he took out the hell-suppressing tripod. The hell-suppressing tripod was in his consciousness, and he did not dare to throw the ancient bronze lamp into it. In fact, he did not even dare to use his spirit consciousness to move the ancient bronze lamp, afraid that the previous dangerous situation would occur again. Carefully, Su Zimo circulated the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra and covered his sleeves with a faint layer of golden Buddhist light. Thereafter, he flicked his sleeves and swept up the ancient bronze lamp on the ground, tossing it into the hell-suppressing tripod. With a plop, the ancient bronze lamp fell into the red-hot molten iron in the cauldron, disappearing from sight. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief and was about to put away the hell-suppressing tripod when he heard a splash. The molten iron in the tripod surged, and the ancient bronze lamp floated up once more. Immediately after, the hell-suppressing tripod shook continuously, and the molten iron rippled, throwing the ancient bronze lamp out of the tripod and onto the ground. Su Zimo was stunned and dumbfounded. The hell-suppressing tripod spat out the ancient bronze lamp? After spinning around in the hell-suppressing tripod and being cleansed, the ancient bronze lamp was still intact and seemed to have turned even more mysterious. The green spots on the ancient bronze lamp had already been washed away by the molten iron in the tripod, and it returned to its original bronze color. Even the hell-suppressing tripod can't swallow this thing? Su Zimo stared at the ancient bronze lamp, and his eyes flickered in deep thought. This ancient bronze lamp might be even more valuable than he had imagined. After washing away the green spots on it, a word was vaguely engraved on the top of the lamp that stored the oil. Su Zimo walked closer and took a closer look before murmuring softly, "Soul." The word soul was engraved on the lamp, and it was written in Sanskrit. That was the reason why Su Zimo did not recognize it immediately. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo took out a new storage bag and circulated the Perfection of Wisdom Nirvana Sutra, according to the same method as before. He used his sleeves to keep the ancient bronze lamp in his storage bag and stored it separately. He still didn't know where this thing came from or what it was used for. However, something that even the hell-suppressing tripod could not swallow was definitely not ordinary. Right then, a commotion sounded from the direction of the main hall. The formation was broken. Chapter 1986. In a flash, Su Zimo sped towards the main hall. At the same time, cultivators from all over the palace noticed the commotion and swarmed towards the main hall. The crowd in front of the main hall grew denser, and there were more than 10,000 of them. All of them were rubbing their palms excitedly. By the time Su Zimo arrived, he saw Yun Ting standing in midair at the front of the crowd. His eyes were bright, and his aura was domineering as he waved his hands continuously, causing his robes to flutter in a transcendent manner. In a short period of time, Yun Ting released at least hundreds of spirit lights from his fingertips that entered the formation in front of the main hall instantly. Suddenly, the light of the formation burst forth in a bedazzling manner and engulfed Yun Ting instantly, causing a series of exclamations. Many cultivators thought that Yun Ting had failed to break the formation and was struck by a backlash. However, everyone soon discovered that Yun Ting's figure was immovable against the light of the formation, and his aura was even sharper than before. "Open up!" Yun Ting hollered softly and pointed forward. The light of the formation was like a tide that was split into two from the middle. Then it dissipated with a bang. After a short burst of light, all of the light disappeared. The formation at the entrance of the main hall was completely destroyed. However, Yun Ting's face was only slightly pale, and his aura did not weaken at all. He took out a fragrant elixir from his storage bag and swallowed it. Before long, his face turned rosy. With a boom, the main hall's doors collapsed heavily, causing dust to fly everywhere. When they saw that, many cultivators were invigorated and their gazes burned. After a momentary daze, they wanted to barge into the main hall to check it out. Finally, someone else is here. Right then, a sigh echoed through the entire palace, as though it came from the distant past and was filled with the vicissitudes of time. Against that sigh, everyone in the palace seemed to be rooted to the spot and could not move at all. Even Yun Ting, who was in midair, and Su Zimo, who was in the crowd, were the same. That power was completely beyond everyone's imagination. Who was that person? How long had he been here for him to say something like that? To think that he was still alive after staying in the emperor's tomb. This palace was one of my palaces in the past, and the jade talisman is in the main hall. After a moment of silence, the voice sounded once more. The owner of this voice, could it be the immortal emperor of that year? The immortal emperor didn't die? Many cultivators were horrified when they thought of this. Humph, Yunting calmly said. It's only a remnant intent left behind by this immortal emperor. Break the formation, and this intent will be released. It's not a brilliant method. It's rare for any of you to be able to break through the formation I left behind. However, I don't know who will be able to obtain the jade talisman in the main hall. After saying a few words, the voice became somewhat weak. It seemed that after the passage of countless years, this remnant will's strength was almost completely depleted. Right, there's one more thing. The immortal emperor's voice sounded again, but this time it was intermittent. This palace hides another treasure. It is much better than the jade talisman. I wonder if there is a fated person. Before he could finish speaking, his voice had already disappeared, and the invisible force that bound the cultivators also disappeared. It really is the remnant will of an immortal emperor. What was his last sentence? I didn't hear it clearly. I think he said that there is another treasure in this palace that is even more precious than the jade talisman. After the remnant will of the immortal emperor disappeared, the crowd instantly exploded, setting off waves of discussion. At this time, Su Zimo's expression did not change, but his heart was beating wildly. The treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor was most likely the ancient bronze lamp with the word soul engraved on it. In all fairness, this ancient bronze lamp was very difficult to notice. It was not in the side hall, where the divine weapons and magic treasures were stored. Instead, it was in the side hall where the spiritual pills and miraculous medicines were stored. Moreover, it was just an ordinary lamp on the wall. It was covered in copper rust. Even if someone discovered it, they would not take a second look. If not for the prison-suppressing cauldron's strange movements. Even if Su Zimo searched the side hall a few more times, he would not have noticed this ancient bronze lamp. Of course, this was only Su Zimo's guess. The treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor, that was more precious than the jade talisman, might not necessarily be the ancient bronze lamp. Most of the cultivators' attention was focused on the unknown treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor. But soon, everyone came to their senses. No one knew what the treasure mentioned by the immortal emperor was. However, that jade talisman was in the main hall in front of them. In the current situation, it was more important to get the jade talisman. After a short silence, Yun Ting was the first to enter the main hall. Immediately after, many cultivators swarmed in and squeezed each other. Some cultivators were even squeezed to the surrounding walls of the main hall, triggering restrictions and dying on the spot. Before the jade talisman could be seen, the smell of blood had already spread. Su Zimo took out his ethereal wings and flew over the heads of the crowd. He entered the main hall and looked around. The main hall was dim and dust floated in the air. However, it was extremely spacious. Even with tens of thousands of cultivators barging in, it did not feel crowded at all. At the front of the main hall, a palm-sized jade talisman floated in midair. It shone with a brilliant light, and the surrounding void was colored by it. Everyone saw the jade talisman immediately, but no one dared to act rashly. There were tens of thousands of Stage 9 mystic immortals here. Anyone who dared to step forward would become a target for everyone. Even the arrogant Fang Xian, after the short exchange with Tang Zi and Yun Ting, had restrained his arrogance and was waiting for an opportunity to strike. Su Zimo looked around and spread out his divine sense. He did not find any trace of Tang Zi. He knew that Tang Zi must be among the crowd. However, there were too many cultivators here, and Tang Zi's concealment technique was extremely brilliant. Even Su Zimo could not find her. Su Zimo suddenly felt a strong sense of hostility. He turned and looked over. It was the powerhouses of the four major immortal sects. The bald monk, the iron-towering man, the middle-aged Taoist priest, and the woman in the blue dress. The four of them had not been able to suppress Su Zimo even after joining forces. At this moment, they had already regarded Su Zimo as their greatest opponent. Hee. At this moment, a chuckle came from the front of the crowd. Since no one dares to step forward, I won't hold back. There was a hint of mockery in Yin Ting's laughter. He did not take the crowd seriously at all. Before he left, he purposely turned around and looked deeply at Su Zimo. There was an indescribable look in his eyes. It was like a provocation, but also like a compliment. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He did not know Yin Ting, nor did they have any interactions. He did not know why Yin Ting would suddenly notice him. Yin Ting flew into the air and slowly moved toward the jade talisman. Although he was proud, he did not dare to be careless. Who knew if there were other dangers in the main hall? Yin Ting had only taken a few steps when a strange sound suddenly came from the main hall. Chapter 1987. The sound was as though countless pearls of various sizes were falling onto a jade plate with tinkling sounds. If it was anywhere else, it would have sounded crisp and pleasant. However, in this dilapidated hall of the Emperor's tomb, it sounded rather intimidating. Everyone turned towards the sound and saw pebble-sized beans rolling down the stone steps in front of the hall, with clouds of yellow mist surging within. At a single glance, the beans were densely packed, and there were at least thousands of them, rolling down the stone steps continuously. What's that? There seems to be Yin spirits circling within those beans. Everyone was wary. In midair, Yin Ting frowned slightly, and his gaze flickered in deep thought. As the Duke of the Celestial Nation with the bloodline of the royal family, he was knowledgeable despite his young age. Could it be? Yin Ting murmured softly. Piak. Before the beans could roll down in front of the cultivators, they shattered one after another. Then yellow fog surged out from the beans. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the yellow fog transformed into eerie figures. Some of them wore tattered Taoist robes and had withered cheeks. Their figures were frail, and they wielded horsetail whisks. Some of them had a broken arm and wielded a saber in one hand as they staggered over. Some of them had half their cheeks missing, but they were still murderous. All of those figures had a common point: the holes where their eyes should be. They were scarlet and emitted a sinister red glow with a menacing, malevolent aura. Otherworldly soldiers. They're otherworldly soldiers. No wonder we didn't see any otherworldly soldiers blocking the way along the way. To think that we're all trapped in this hall. Why are those otherworldly soldiers coming out of the beans? A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. The appearance of thousands of otherworldly soldiers in the hall was indeed shocking, as they blocked everyone's path with rumbling, malevolent auras. Fufu. In midair, Yin Ting's expression was calm as usual, as though he had already guessed what was going on. He chuckled. To think that I would be able to witness the mystic art of transforming beans into soldiers in this palace. That statement caused an uproar. Transforming beans into soldiers was a peerless mystic art. Most of the cultivators present did not have high cultivation realms. Most of them were from the lower realms, and had never seen such a thing before. At most, they had heard of some legends. Some exalted immortals could summon heavenly soldiers and generals in the blink of an eye to form a mighty army. They were invincible and invincible. Now that all the cultivators had witnessed it with their own eyes, they finally realized that the soldiers summoned by casting beans were not heavenly soldiers or heavenly generals, but otherworldly soldiers and otherworldly generals. Kill! 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 Thousands of undead soldiers roared and charged at the cultivators with bloodshot eyes. Yin Ting was not afraid at all. He chuckled and said, I presume this is the final test you left behind. These evil things might be able to stop others, but they can't stop me, Yin Ting. I must get the jade talisman. With that, Yin Ting charged toward the army of Yin soldiers in front of him. Before the two sides came into contact, Yin Ting put two fingers together and gently waved them forward. Slash! A blazing light shot out from Yin Ting's sword fingers. It was extremely sharp and directly tore a huge gap in the army of Yin soldiers. The Yin soldier at the front was cut into two by the sword light. The cut was smooth. This sword chi was sharper than a real sword. Yin Ting moved and charged into the gap alone. Your Highness, be careful. Many cultivators from the Zishuan Immortal Kingdom shouted and charged forward. However, the undead soldiers were endless. Soon, Yun Ting's figure was drowned, and the gap was repaired, isolating Yun Ting from the other cultivators. The cultivators standing at the periphery could only see the surging sword qi in the army of Yin soldiers. Wherever it passed, people were thrown off their horses and broken limbs flew everywhere. Elder Gu from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom and Fang Xian led the cultivators behind them and charged forward. The cultivators from the 4 major immortal sects also swarmed forward. The rest of the cultivators also moved and charged toward the army of Yin soldiers. Whoever could charge through the army of Yin soldiers first would have the upper hand and the best chance to get the Jade Talisman. Although these Yin soldiers were full of murderous aura, their cultivation was limited. Almost all of them were mystic immortals. There were even some low-level mystic immortals among them. They were not much of a threat to the cultivators. Moreover, these Yin soldiers had an extremely obvious flaw. They did not have primordial spirits and could not use any mystic arts. What they relied on was only their broken and tattered bodies. Su Zimo did not make a move immediately. Instead, he chose to watch from the sidelines. If this casting bean soldiers was really the final test that the immortal emperor left for the cultivators, it was too simple. Su Zimo's ears twitched. Amidst the chaotic fighting and shouting in the main hall, he vaguely heard a faint sound. It was the sound of beans jumping. Su Zimo frowned slightly. He jumped up and went to a high place to look. At the end of the main hall, there were still many sparkling beans jumping and rolling down the stone steps. Then they cracked and transformed into Yin soldiers and Yin generals. Some of the beans even evolved into huge birds and beasts. There were all kinds of strange creatures. After a round of fighting, the number of Yin soldiers did not decrease. Instead, it was increasing at a terrifying speed. The beans at the end of the main hall were endless. If this continued, the number of Yin soldiers would not be in the tens of thousands. There would be hundreds of thousands, or even millions of Yin soldiers. What was more terrifying was that Su Zimo could clearly feel that the Yin soldiers and Yin generals that evolved later were obviously stronger than before. Their bodies were more complete, and their auras were terrifying. He could already see Yin soldiers of earthly origin realm emerging from the beans. At this rate, there might even be Yin soldiers of level 6, level 9, or even heaven immortal realm. Even if these Yin soldiers and Yin generals did not have primordial spirits and could not use any mystic arts, their physical strength was enough to kill everyone. It was impossible to kill all of these Yin soldiers and Yin generals, not to mention snatching the Jade Talisman under the protection of the endless Yin soldiers. There must be a way to break this. Since the Immortal Emperor Senior had left this treasure for the Fated One, he would not cut off all the ways out. Su Zimo squinted his eyes and looked over. At the end of the main hall, the Jade Talisman was suspended in mid-air, emitting a brilliant light. The light sprinkled down and formed a large empty area in the main hall. The beans rolled down the stone steps. However, as if they had a mind of their own, they went around this area. Su Zimo had a plan in mind. I have to get past the Yin soldiers and reach the area covered by the Jade Talisman. I can't get entangled with these Yin soldiers and Yin generals. Su Zimo thought. He looked around the battlefield and began to search for Tang Zi's whereabouts. Although Tang Zi was adept at concealment, she still couldn't hide herself from the onslaught of the army of Yin soldiers. She continued to slaughter her way through the battlefield as she slowly advanced. The Yin soldiers here are endless. The ones at the back are getting stronger. Don't get caught up in the battle. Hurry up and get there. Don't block the way in the air. Su Zimo said through his divine sense. Chapter 1988. Tang Zi knew the Void Thunder Manual, so she might have some connection with the Thunder Emperor. The Thunder Emperor had been suppressed for hundreds of thousands of years, and Tang Zi was young. Of course, she couldn't be the Thunder Emperor's successor, but she might be his disciple. This was the reason why Su Zimo could not watch Tang Zi be trapped to death by the army of otherworldly soldiers. Tang Zi was also very smart. After fighting with the army of ghosts for a while, she felt that something was wrong. Just as she was hesitating whether to advance or retreat, Su Zimo's voice came. Without hesitation, she leaped into the air and sped forward. As an assassin, she had always been a loner. She had no friends since she was a child. Her parents died when she was young, and she didn't trust anyone except her master. But for some reason, she had an indescribable sense of trust with Su Zimo, even though she hadn't known him for long. It was like an intuition, a sixth sense, that this person wouldn't harm her. Therefore, after hearing Su Zimo's voice transmission, she didn't hesitate at all. The resistance in the air was indeed much lower. Moreover, looking down from above, Tang Zi also saw the terrifying scene at the end of the hall. The densely packed beings rolled down and transformed into figures with terrifying auras. Their murderous auras were torrential. If they continued to fight with the army of ghosts below, it would be more difficult than ascending to the heavens if they wanted to leave the hall, let alone charge through. Charge to the area covered by the light of the Jade Talisman. Su Zimo's voice sounded again. Tang Zi focused and found that the area was indeed very strange. Whether it was the beings at the beginning or the army of ghosts, they all seemed to be afraid and didn't dare to touch that area. Let's go. In a short while, Su Zimo came to Tang Zi's side and stretched out his hand. Tang Zi knew that Su Zimo's movement technique was powerful, and he wanted to bring her over. However, looking at Su Zimo's hand, Tang Zi panicked for no reason. She lowered her head and subconsciously avoided Su Zimo's gaze. Soon Tang Zi calmed down. She looked up expressionlessly and said, "With my strength, I can go over by myself. Yun Ting and the others have already found something strange. Don't let them beat you to it." At this time, Yun Ting, who was at the front of the army of ghosts, also flew into the air. He saw how terrifying the beings were. At the same time, Fang Xian of the Yin Sun Immortal Kingdom, a few powerhouses of the four major immortal sects, and some prodigies of other sects also flew into the air. These people were all peak experts amongst the mysterious immortals. When they encountered such danger, practically all of them noticed the abnormality at the first possible moment. Profound immortal cheese consumption, not to mention fighting in the air. Of the immortals. Therefore, most cultivators on the ground immortal, and Yun. Of the of course of immortal, but immortal was immortal heavens. Immortals of course immortals als of course immortals, immortals immortal. TT immortal Fang's immortals. Behind them were the powerhouses of the four major immortal sects. Tang Zi stretched out her hand and pushed Su Zimo lightly. She urged, "Hurry up and go. Don't worry about me." She knew that if Su Zimo carried her, his speed would be slowed down, and he would fall behind the others. At that time, even if the two of them could rush over, they might not be able to get anything. Su Zimo pondered for a while and nodded. "Be careful." As soon as he finished speaking, a pair of huge golden wings suddenly grew out of Su Zimo's back. Under the golden wings, there was a pair of small wings that were almost transparent. The rock wings and the ethereal wings were activated at the same time. Whoosh! Su Zimo's figure turned into a streak of golden light as he charged forward at lightning speed. His speed was shocking. At the same time, Yun Ting and the others in front were not unhindered. They encountered some trouble. The further they went, the more terrifying and powerful the ghost soldiers and generals were. In the beginning, the army of ghost soldiers could not fly, but now, there were already some ghost soldiers and ferocious flying beasts in the air. They were filled with killing intent. Yun Ting and the others had to stop and fight with these ghost soldiers. Naturally, their speed was slowed down. Su Zimo relied on the Rockwing's extreme speed. Even if there were ghost soldiers blocking his way, he could quickly pass through. Most of the time, the ghost soldiers and generals could not react at all. They were usually slow to react. The bald monk of the four major immortal sects was swinging his golden fist and fighting with a ghost soldier. Suddenly, beside his ears, there was a sharp and rapid sound of the wind. Then, he saw a ray of golden light flash past him from the corner of his eye. "What's that?" The bald monk jumped in fright. "It's Su Zimo from the great Jin immortal nation." The middle-aged Taoist priest recognized it. Back then, Su Zimo relied on this movement technique to cross the lake. It left a deep impression on him. He surpassed me. The iron towering man roared furiously and charged forward, pushing aside the Yin soldiers blocking his way. Then he strode forward and chased after them. On the other side, Old Man Go and Fang Xian followed behind Yun Ting. Flying in the air consumed a lot of energy, let alone fighting. Old Man Go was in his twilight years. Although his essence spirit was strong, his spirit consciousness attack was useless against the ghost soldiers. This short period of battle had already made him feel exhausted, and he was gasping for breath. Initially, he could still follow closely behind Yun Ting when he joined forces with Fang Xian. But now, Old Man Ji's blood qi was weak and his combat strength was reduced. Fang Xian had to take care of him most of the time. Old Man Go had become a burden to Fang Xian. Old Man Go looked back and saw that the rest of the people from the Yin-Yang Immortal Kingdom were completely surrounded by the ghost soldiers. At this moment, they did not have the chance to retreat even if they wanted to. On the battlefield, miserable screams could be heard that made one's scalp tingle. He saw with his own eyes that a cultivator was torn into two by the ghost soldiers. Old Man Ji's face turned paler. Fang Xian, you can't leave me behind. Old Man Ge seemed to have thought of something and quickly turned around. He threatened in a low voice. I'm the only one who can bring you out of the Emperor's tomb. If you dare to leave me behind and take the Jade Talisman alone, I'll immediately send a message back. At that time, even if you can return alive, I'll make sure you die without a burial ground. Fang Xian blocked the ghost soldiers and said, Exalted Immortal, you worry too much. I, Fang Xian, still hope that you can put in a good word for me in front of His Highness. How would I dare to be disloyal? It's good that you know. Old Man Ge snorted. At this moment, Fang Xian's expression changed as he noticed Su Zimo, who had caught up from behind. Exalted Immortal, we have to stop this person. We can't let him overtake us. Fang Xian let out a low growl and charged forward immediately. Chapter 1989. There was nothing wrong with stopping Su Zimo. However, Elder Ge felt that something was amiss. On the chaotic battlefield, the situation was dangerous and tense, so he did not have the energy to think about it. Moreover, Fang Xian had already rushed forward, so Elder Ge could only follow. In the air, Su Zimo relied on the Dapeng Wing's extreme speed divine power, and continued to pass through the obstruction of many Yin soldiers. His speed did not decrease at all, as he quickly approached Yun Ting, who was at the front. All of a sudden, a figure charged out from the side and punched out, emitting an extremely violent and ferocious aura. The surrounding air became scorching hot from the friction of the punch. There was no extra movement in the punch. It was a simple straight punch, but it blocked all of Su Zimo's escape routes. Su Zimo's expression did not change. He ignored the punch, and his body showed no signs of slowing down at all. Instead, he charged forward fiercely. Boom! The two collided, and there was a loud explosion that shook the heavens and earth. Su Zimo's figure appeared and stopped in midair. An expert, and a top expert. One had to know that Qinglian's true body had now grown to the peak of the 9th grade. Even if she did not use her qi, she could fight against a Khanate mystic grade Dharma treasure head-on. After he released his extreme speed divine power, the ethereal wings, to still be able to stop him. Apart from the amazing physical strength, one also had to have extremely good eyesight. Even the geniuses of the 4 major immortal sects who had fought with him before did not have such means. Su Zimo looked sideways and saw a man in black standing in midair not far away. It was the person who had fought with Tang Zi before. Fang Xian's body shook violently, and he took half a step back. His face was dark, and he had one hand behind his back. As a monster from the lower world, he cultivated a mysterious cultivation method, the divine elephant breathing technique. He was invincible. Every time he attacked, he had the power of a divine elephant that could destroy the heavens and earth and collapse the stars. If this cultivation method was cultivated to the extreme, one could even obtain the power of thousands of divine elephants. He would be invincible on land and suppress all living beings. The fact that he was able to transcend the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascend with an indestructible body showed how powerful his body was. Not to mention in the lower realm, even after ascending to the upper realm, no cultivator of the same level was a match for him in close combat. However, just now he and Su Zimo had not used their blood chi. It was just a pure physical fight, yet he was actually at a disadvantage. His hands behind his back were trembling slightly as he felt waves of intense pain. He secretly channeled his chi and blood to dispel the pain. The internal injuries on his palms slowly healed. A thought flashed through Fang Xian's mind. He realized that even if he used his blood chi, he might not be able to defeat Su Zimo. Even if he could gain the upper hand by activating his bloodline phenomenon, he wouldn't be able to suppress Su Zimo within a short time. Not to mention, the bloodline phenomenon was one of his greatest trump cards, and he would absolutely not utilize it unless he had no other choice. He had prepared this photo as a trump card for Yun Ting. With that thought in mind, Fang Xian moved and came to Su Zimo's side. This man's physique is extremely strong. I'll take him on head-on. Exalted Immortal attack from behind. On the other side, Old Man Ge had just arrived when he heard Fang Xian's voice transmission. Before he could think further, Fang Xian had already made his move. Boom! Fang Xian channeled his blood chi, and the sound of a tsunami echoed from his body. Tsunami blood. Filled with blood chi, Fang Xian's body expanded rapidly and grew continuously. In the blink of an eye, he grew into a 30 feet tall giant. Bang! 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 Fang Xian's enormous body swayed. Every step he took in midair would emit a loud bang. His entire body was suffused with a barbaric and ferocious aura. He was like a divine elephant that had come from the wilderness and was charging over. The collision and stomping power of a divine elephant was the most frightening. On land, no living being could stop it. Su Zimo looked at Fang Xian, who was charging over with a fearless expression and a burning gaze. His feet fiercely stomped on the ground, and his knees bent forward. His entire body was extremely stretched like a galloping horse. That was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Worried that Qinglian's bloodline would be exposed, Su Zimo did not use his blood chi. Even so, the aura of that move was not weak at all. Exalted Immortal, this is the time to attack. Fang Xian sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and growled. Old Man Ge did not think much and advanced instinctively. Conjuring a dermic seal with both hands, he smashed it towards Su Zimo's back. When he saw that Fang Xian and Su Zimo were about to collide, a crafty look flashed through Fang Xian's eyes. Suddenly, he dispersed his blood chi and stopped in his tracks. Like a deflated balloon, Fang Xian's body shriveled rapidly and returned to normal. Fang Xian did not choose to fight Su Zimo head-on. Instead, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and retreated. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Right then, Old Man Ge's attack descended. Su Zimo harumphed coldly. Without even thinking or turning back, his entire arm turned limp like the trunk of an elephant. With a thud, he swung it behind him. The change was extremely sudden, and without any warning. Initially, Fang Xian and Old Man Ge joined forces to stop Su Zimo. However, with Fang Xian's sudden retreat, Old Man Ge was left to face Su Zimo alone. Old Man Ge wanted to dodge and retreat, but it was already too late. His eyes widened as he watched Fang Xian leave. Initially, his eyes were filled with shock, suspicion and confusion. Eventually, they were filled with rage. You! Old Man Ge only managed to say a single word before the dermic seal he conjured with both hands was shattered by Su Zimo's arm. Immediately after, the arm whipped Old Man Ge on the head, shattering his skull and destroying his essence spirit. He died on the spot. Although Old Man Ge's essence spirit was also at Earth Essence Realm, he did not have the chance to release essence spirit secret skills. Although there were many cultivators present, less than 5 of them could withstand Su Zimo's attack. Su Zimo frowned and quickly understood that he had been used as a weapon. However, this did not affect him much. He was just an exalted immortal from the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom. So what if he killed him? However, the treacherous and cunning that Fang Xian revealed made him raise a trace of vigilance. This person was a little tricky. Thank you. Fang Xian came to Old Man Ji's side and took his storage bag. After keeping it, he laughed sinisterly at Su Zimo and continued to charge forward. As a demon from the lower world who had transcended the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended, he was proud and would not submit to others easily. Moreover, Old Man Gu was just a servant of the Duke. In this old man's bones, there was a kind of condescending contempt and arrogance, never placing Fang Xian in his eyes. Although Fang Xian was respectful on the surface, he was already dissatisfied and resentful. However, no matter how bold he would not dare to kill an exalted immortal in front of everyone like Su Zimo did. That was the reason for what happened earlier on. To him, this old man was already a burden and was useless. After abandoning him, Fang Xian chased after Yun Ting with a relaxed expression. Chapter 1990. Judging from Fang Xian's earlier scheme, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was a cunning old fox. Not only had he schemed against Elder Gu, but he had also made Su Zimo his weapon. At the same time that he got rid of a huge problem, he also removed himself from the matter completely and removed himself from it. Even if he returned to the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, he would not be punished. After a slight delay, Su Zimo flapped his wings and continued to fly in the direction of the Jade Talisman. At this time, more and more beings cracked and transformed into powerful living beings. Towards the end, almost all of them were Stage 9 mystic immortals, and some were even Earth deity level Een soldiers. A humongous sea beast floated over and opened its mouth wide, as if it was going to swallow the entire hall into its stomach. Su Zimo did not dodge. Instead, he turned into a ray of golden light and rushed over. Gulp. The sea beast gulped down Su Zimo in huge mouthfuls. Su Zimo did not stop. Instead, he rushed even more ferociously. He was going to run through the huge body of the sea beast. At this time, Yun Ting was far ahead of the rest. Su Zimo did not have much time to tangle with the sea beast. Puff, 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 puff. A ray of golden light shot through the sea beast's head and pierced through its chest and internal organs. Towards the back, Su Zimo's strength was depleted as well. Fortunately, they were in the sea beast's body, and there was a huge skeleton to hide it. Su Zimo did not have to worry about being discovered and exposing the secret of Qinglian's true body. Boom! Channeling his blood qi, Su Zimo burst forth with an extremely terrifying power, once more as he tore through the body of the sea beast at lightning speed. Su Zimo overtook Fang Xian again and caught up with Yun Ting. Fang Xian cursed in his heart. However, there was nothing he could do when he saw this. With the help of the bean soldiers, the true geniuses among the cultivators had stood out. At this time, the geniuses were divided into several groups. The one at the front was Duke Yun Ting of the Zixian Celestial Kingdom. His fleshly body was extremely strong. Every punch and kick, every move and style carried an extremely sharp edge. Wherever he pointed, almost no Een soldiers could stand in his way. Of course, as the Een soldiers became stronger, his speed gradually slowed down. The one at the second place was Su Zimo. Su Zimo's method was more violent and ferocious. He did not reduce his speed at all. He was getting closer and closer to Yun Ting. The ones at the third place was Fang Xian and Tang Zi. The two of them had different methods, each displaying their own abilities. Fang Xian's strength was more ferocious, while Tang Zi's movements were unpredictable. Fang Xian's seat was slightly closer to the front, while Tang Zi was slightly behind. The ones at the fourth place were the geniuses of the four immortal celestial sects. Although the four of them were behind Su Zimo, Yun Ting, and the rest, they were not far behind, and were practically following Tang Zi closely. At the back were the elites among the cultivators. There were not many of them. There were only a few dozen of them. They were scattered and fighting on their own. Although these people were also in the air, they would be lucky if they could escape alive, let alone break through the Een soldiers' blockade. Just flying in the air consumed a lot of primordial qi, let alone fighting the Een soldiers in the air. If one was not a top genius, it would be impossible to break through. Many cultivators had entered the imperial tomb, but there were only a few who stood out. Some of the more observant cultivators saw that the situation was not good and began to retreat. They were ready to escape the hall. However, there were too many Yin soldiers. Even if they wanted to escape, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yun Ting was getting closer and closer to the Jade Talisman. He was only 200 feet away. As long as he crossed this distance, he would be able to reach the Jade Talisman's brilliance. This distance was only a few breaths' time for him. The Jade Talisman was at his fingertips. Yun Ting's lips curled into a smile. Without stopping, he turned around and glanced at Su Zimo behind him. He raised a finger with a smug expression and waved it in front of him. Su Zimo was smart and understood the meaning of that gesture instantly. Yun Ting was saying that he was number one and that Su Zimo was no match for him. Su Zimo's expression was calm as he maintained his speed. However, there was a look of mockery in his eyes. At the same time, Yun Ting suddenly felt a sharp sound, as though a sharp weapon was piercing towards him. Yun Ting was alarmed. Before the attack had even landed, he felt a sharp pain in his back. This meant that the attacker's strength was far beyond his. Without thinking, Yun Ting's body swayed and turned blurry. His figure faded, as though he had entered a nameless void and was no longer in this world. Great Void Sword. Even in the entire upper world, this movement secret skill was one of the top movement techniques, and had already touched upon the Tao and Dharma of space. If it was not extremely dangerous, Yun Ting would not have released Great Void Sword. Whoosh! A white bone spear missed its target. Yun Ting turned around and frowned when he saw the attacker. If the ones he had met before could be called Yin soldiers, then the one in front of him could definitely be called a Yin general. This person did not have a head, and was riding on a red-crowned crane. He held a bone spear in his hand, and his body was surrounded by a thick murderous aura. This Yin general's cultivation level had reached Earth Origin Stage 7. He could be considered as a high-level Earth immortal. Although this Yin general did not have a primordial spirit, and could not use any secret skills, the strength he had just displayed was enough to kill Yun Ting. Even with Yun Ting's pride, he had to focus and not be careless. This was the last obstacle. As long as he could get past this Yin general, he would be able to reach the area covered by the Jade Talisman's brilliance. With this delay, Su Zimo had caught up with him. Yun Ting glanced at Su Zimo from the corner of his eye, and saw two high-level Earth Immortal Yin soldiers in front of him. They formed a triangle formation, and blocked his path. Yun Ting heaved a sigh of relief. With such a terrifying Yin general blocking him, Su Zimo would not be able to get past it in a short period of time. But soon, Yun Ting realized that something was wrong. Although there were two Yin soldiers blocking his path, Su Zimo's speed did not slow down at all. He was extremely fast. Oh no, it's that kind of movement skill. Although Yun Ting did not see it with his own eyes, he had heard some cultivators talking about it. According to those cultivators, Su Zimo had relied on a strange movement skill that was close to teleportation to cross the lake and pluck the 7 Dawn Immortal Ginseng. Just as expected, just as Su Zimo was about to collide with the two Yin soldiers' swords, his body suddenly flickered. When he reappeared, Su Zimo had already left the two Yin soldiers behind him. 9 true dragon flashes. The path ahead was smooth, and there were no longer any obstacles. Su Zimo turned around and looked at Yun Ting with a faint smile. He extended a finger and waved it in front of Yun Ting. Yun Ting was enraged. Since he started cultivating, he had never been provoked and humiliated in such a way. Haha. Su Zimo laughed and turned to leave. Chapter 1991. Su Zimo flapped his wings and turned into a beam of golden light. In the blink of an eye, he was within the range of the Jade Talisman's brilliance. The otherworldly soldiers seemed to have sensed something and were extremely wary of the Jade Talisman's brilliance. They stopped and dispersed. The Jade Talisman was right in front of him. Su Zimo still didn't know what the Jade Talisman's secret was. However, if it could make the 3 great celestial kingdoms, the 4 great celestial sects, and countless other sects and factions of all sizes in the Divine Cloud continent, this Jade Talisman was definitely not simple. Su Zimo didn't hesitate anymore. He moved and quickly rose into the air, grabbing the jade talisman high up in the sky. As long as he could get the jade talisman, he would have the upper hand. Whether he fought or retreated, he would have the upper hand. Moreover, with the jade talisman in hand, he wouldn't have to fear the otherworldly soldiers around him. Su Zimo was extremely fast. Just as he was about to grab the jade talisman, an extremely cold and murderous aura suddenly came from behind him. A beam of sword light pierced through the air. It was so fast that it reached Su Zimo's outstretched arm first. This murderous aura was so terrifying that Su Zimo even felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar in an instant. His hands and feet were cold. If he wasn't Qinglian's real body and had strong blood qi, this murderous aura would be enough to freeze his blood vessels. This murderous aura was so strong that even the heavenly kill and earthly kill sword techniques he cultivated couldn't compare to it. Could it be? A thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Now that he was facing a strong enemy, and the situation was critical, he didn't dare to be distracted, and didn't think too much. This beam of sword qi was really amazing. It was so sharp that it seemed to be able to cut through everything in the world, pierce through the void, and destroy everything. Even if Qinglian's real body could fight against a mystic-grade Dharma treasure, it would definitely not be able to block this sword. Su Zimo could almost foresee that if he continued to reach out to grab the jade talisman, his entire hand would be cut off by this beam of sword qi before he could touch the jade talisman. It's Yunting. Su Zimo didn't have to look back to guess who it was. Yunting was the only one who could unleash such terrifying sword energy. Su Zimo unleashed True Dragon's 9 flashes and got past the Yin soldiers first. Yunting wasn't weak either. Disregarding the depletion of his origin energy, he executed the Great Void Sword consecutively to break free from the Yin general's entanglement, following which he charged forward. Yunting was determined to obtain the Jade Talisman. He would not allow anyone else to lay a finger on it. Therefore, when he intercepted Su Zimo this time, he did not hold back at all and directly unleashed his murderous sword qi. Before this, Yunting had also released sword qi that was sharp enough to cut through gold and jade. But that was only the most ordinary sword qi that he had cultivated. The murderous sword qi was much more terrifying than these. Su Zimo's expression was calm, and his eyes were unperturbed. He had experienced this kind of situation too many times, so it was nothing to him. He withdrew his palm, and his figure flickered, suddenly disappearing from the spot. After reaching the 9th level of the Mystic Origin stage, Su Zimo was able to release the True Dragon Flash 3 times in a short period of time. Right now, he was using the second flash. By the time Su Zimo appeared once more, he was already behind Yunting. Without hesitation, Su Zimo raised his palm and slapped down towards Yunting's head. This time round, Su Zimo did not hold back and released the Great Chaos Essence palm right away. His fair, tender palm expanded instantly, as though it had transformed into a gigantic millstone, crushing down towards Yunting with a shocking aura. His strength was so great that it even caused the air to explode with a deafening sound. Not only did he avoid Yunting's sword qi, he even turned the situation around and attacked. The change was extremely sudden. Su Zimo appeared behind Yunting without any warning, and the latter had no time to react at all. He did not even have time to turn around, let alone escape. Good timing. Not only was Yunting not flustered at all, he hollered as his blood qi surged, and his hair stood on end. All of a sudden, Yunting's black hair stood on end. Every strand of his hair shot up to the sky like countless long swords, exuding an extremely sharp aura. Amazing! When he saw that, Su Zimo praised from the depths of his heart. Although Yunting was young, his cultivation in the Sword Dao was way too deep. He had already fused the Sword Dao into every single part of his body, and even cultivated it to the ends of his hair. Even his hair was a killing weapon that was extremely sharp, and even divine weapons and dharmic treasures could not compare to it. Yunting's hair stood on end, and it was no different from countless flying swords. Boom! The Great Chaos Essence palm descended and collided with Yunting's hair with a deafening bang. Although the hair seemed soft, it burst forth with a terrifying sharpness that wanted to pierce the gigantic millstone above his head. Creak! 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 The millstone crushed and spun, rubbing against Yunting's hair repeatedly with an ear-piercing sound. Clang! Clang! A portion of Yunting's black hair snapped, and the sound of a bowstring snapping could be heard. At the same time, Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his palm. His hair was like a sword and destroyed the great chaos essence palm. Even Su Zimo was stunned by Yunting's move. Yunting's hair snapped, and the great chaos essence palm dissipated at the same time. Su Zimo did not linger, and his figure flashed once more. Third flash. This time round, Su Zimo was already beside the Jade Talisman when he appeared once more. The Jade Talisman was close. Given Yunting's methods, it would be difficult to determine a victor within a short period of time. Yunting was truly the most troublesome and strongest opponent he had encountered since ascending to the upper world. If he continued to linger, it would be easy for other unforeseen events to occur when Fang Xian and the others caught up. At that thought, Su Zimo made a prompt decision and retreated, prepared to get his hands on the Jade Talisman first. With me around, don't even think about getting your hands on the Jade Talisman. The moment Su Zimo reached out, Yunting's voice sounded in his ears. Su Zimo ignored Yunting's threat. No matter how fast the latter's movement technique was, it could not compare to the true dragon's 9 flashes. Su Zimo reached out and grabbed, but his expression changed slightly. He missed. The Jade Talisman was right in front of him, but he grabbed nothing. The Jade Talisman was still there motionlessly, but Su Zimo did not manage to grab it. It was as though there was a layer of space between his palm and the Jade Talisman. Space overlay? Su Zimo frowned. Although space overlay was only one of the lesser divine powers, it was extremely mysterious and difficult to comprehend. Space and time divine powers were extremely difficult to comprehend. Once comprehended and released, the power would be immense, and the effects would be shocking. For example, the time divine power Time Blade had always been one of Su Zimo's strongest killing moves. Although the space overlay released by Yunting earlier on did not have much lethality, it created a layer of space between Su Zimo's Jade Talisman, causing Su Zimo's attack to miss. With that single move, Yunting had already arrived opposite Su Zimo. The Jade Talisman was right in front of the two of them. However, if Su Zimo wanted to snatch the Jade Talisman, he would have to get past Yunting. It was the same for Yunting. Book Abode Reading Website. Chapter 1992. This man is strong. Su Zimo looked at Yunting, who was not far away, and murmured internally. After ascending to the upper realm, apart from Tang Zi, Yunting was the only other person who could make him release the 9 true dragon flash twice in a row to no avail. Furthermore, Su Zimo had a feeling that even if he could release the 3rd flash, he would not be able to suppress this person. This was an extremely strong opponent who could even threaten him. Ever since he started cultivating, there were not many cultivators who could make him feel threatened. In Tianhuang mainland, there were only a few people who could. More importantly, there was a special connection between him and Commandery Prince Yunting. Before this, when Yunting released that terrifying sword chi, a guess flashed through his mind. However, the situation was critical, and he could not divert his attention to think about it. Now that Su Zimo looked at Yunting, who was emitting a sharp aura, he was even more certain of his guess. Seems like you've guessed it. Yunting chuckled. Su Zimo asked, the Human Slayer Sword Art? The Human Slayer Sword Art was most likely the Human Slayer Sword Art, with such a terrifying killing intent that surpassed even the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer. That's right. Yunting did not hide anything and said frankly, I cultivate the Human Slayer Sword Art, while you cultivate the Heaven Slayer Sword Art. There's a rumor that the Heavenly Slayer and Earthly Slayer were left in the lower realm. To think that I would bump into someone who cultivates the Heaven Slayer Sword Art, ascending to the upper realm. This is the will of the heavens. This is an opportunity. Yunting was in high spirits, and his tone was filled with immense confidence. The 3 great sword arts have been separated for many years. Even the heavens want to reunite the 3 great sword arts. The Heavenly Slayer has already appeared. If nothing goes wrong, the Earthly Slayer will appear soon as well. Once I obtain your Heaven Slayer Sword Art, I'll search for the earthly slayer sword art. At that time, the three great sword arts will be reunited and I, Yin Ting, will become the #1 sword of divine cloud mainland, 9 clouds immortal realm, and even the entire heaven world. In the future, I'll head to the sword world and challenge all the experts of the sword Dao there. I, Yin Ting, will use the sword in my hand to defeat all the experts of the world and reign supreme for eternity. With every word Yin Ting spoke, the sharpness on his body became sharper, and his aura grew stronger by a notch. Yin Ting was accumulating power. Every word he said seemed like he was talking to himself. But in fact, he was accumulating power for himself and pressuring Su Zimo. Su Zimo's expression was grave. It had been a long time since he had encountered such a terrifying and powerful opponent. The last person who made him feel this kind of pressure was Monk Daming. The fusion of the three great sword techniques is indeed the will of the heavens. Su Zimo suddenly smiled and said slowly, "But this may not be your opportunity." Yin Ting wanted to fuse the three sword arts, and Su Zimo had the same idea. Yin Ting stared at Su Zimo and nodded with a smile. "You're right. We have the same idea. Therefore, even if we don't fight for the Jade Talisman, there will be a battle between us." Yin Ting's gaze was as sharp as a sword, and the light radiating from his eyes could even cause one to feel waves of piercing pain. If not for the fact that Su Zimo possessed the 2 God stones, illumination and nether glow, and cultivated 2 types of visual techniques, he would not have been able to meet Yin Ting's gaze directly. However, Su Zimo knew very well that if he were to avert his gaze, given Yin Ting's perception, the latter would definitely attack with the most ferocious attack possible. That was the terror of Yin Ting. On the other side, Yin Ting's evaluation of Su Zimo was rising continuously as well. If it was anyone else, they would not have been able to withstand his gaze. To think that this person who ascended from the lower world would be able to match his gaze without being disadvantaged. On the surface, the two of them were merely facing each other. However, in reality, they had already begun to test each other. Any slight change, or even the slightest abnormality in one's breathing or pulse, would lead to an earth-shattering battle. Both parties were scrutinizing each other, carefully searching for openings. Within the otherworldly army, Fang Xian and the others were still advancing with all their might. By the time Fang Xian and the others arrived, something else would definitely happen. There was not much time left for the two of them. "Very good." Yin Ting was the first to speak and said in a deep voice, "Indeed, you're a decent opponent. You're worthy of me going all out." The moment he said that, Yin Ting's pupils constricted to the size of needles. Thereafter, 2 extremely sharp sword lights burst forth with a chilling aura. The 2 sword lights streaked through the voids and even let out a sword hum. If one had not witnessed it personally, it would be hard to imagine that such a terrifying sword light could be released from one's eyes. Visual technique, Ice Soul Sword Eye. The 2 sword lights burst forth, and the surrounding voids seemed to freeze as the temperature plummeted. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit without holding back, and released the 2 great visual techniques, illumination and nether fluorescence. However, something unexpected happened in between. Illumination I was released normally, and released a blinding beam of light that collided fiercely against the 2 sword lights. However, there was no reaction from the nether fluorescence eye. When Su Zimo's spirit consciousness entered his left eye, it was as though it met with some sort of obstruction, and did not cause any ripples. Previously on the lone island, the nether fluorescent stone absorbed a tremendous amount of power of darkness. Given the current power of Su Zimo's essence spirit, it was difficult for him to channel it. Of course, that power had not disappeared, and was hidden within the nether fluorescent stone the entire time. If it was released one day, it would definitely cause an extremely terrifying scene. Boom! The 2 sword lights collided with the blazing beam of light, and the ice melted before regenerating quickly. If illumination and nether fluorescence were released at the same time, it would definitely be superior to the Ice Soul Sword Eye. However, at that moment, Su Zimo was disadvantaged in this visual technique clash with only illumination eye. Layers of frost formed rapidly on his body, with a bone-chilling coldness. Boom! Yin Ting attacked brazenly and crossed the voids, arriving instantly with a punch. The moment Su Zimo's body was covered in frost, and his movements were affected, Yin Ting attacked. In a fight between top monster incarnates as such, they would not let go of any openings or missed any opportunity. Just now, Yin Ting's accumulated strength was gathered on that punch with a torrential aura that was unstoppable. In fact, Su Zimo even felt a sense of suffocation. Before the punch arrived, his cheeks were already hurting from the wind of the punch. It was way too strong. Against that punch, Su Zimo could not avoid it. He punched in reverse, and seemed to condense a gigantic seal that met Yin Ting's punch. Bang! The two fists collided, and the friction between flesh and bones let out a shuddering sound. The strength of both of them was released completely in that single punch without holding back. The two people's fleshy body power was actually evenly matched. However, before long, Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his fist. Yin Ting's sword Dao had already been cultivated to every part of his body. His brows, hair, and even the hairs on his body were sharp killing weapons. Apart from the burst of his physical strength, Yin Ting's punch was also filled with sharpness. Although the sharpness of his sword Dao could not break through the defense of Qinglian's true body, it hurt Su Zimo. Chapter 1993. Both of them clashed head-on with their fists, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Su Zimo's expression did not change. Taking advantage of the moment when the two of them separated from each other, he changed his move and turned his fist into a palm. The great chaotic essence palm was formed and crushed toward Yin Ting. Just as Su Zimo changed his move, Yin Ting also changed his move. He clenched his fingers together and formed a sword finger, turning his fist into a sword. The two of them had an extraordinary tacit understanding and displayed unparalleled combat talent. They were unwilling to let go of any opportunity. The great chaotic essence palm was heavy and steady. The sword finger was sharp and could cut through gold and jade. The palm and sword collided, and another loud sound was heard. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks appeared on the huge millstone formed by the great chaotic essence palm. The sharpness of Yin Ting's sword finger also broke inch by inch. Their figures swayed slightly, and then they quickly retreated to distance themselves from each other and neutralize the power that surged into their bodies. The battle between the two of them seemed short, but they almost erupted with the power of a Stage 9 mystic immortal. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Ever since Qinglian's true body had grown to Stage 9, no one could resist the physical strength of Qinglian's true body, even if she did not use her blood qi. Whether it was the prodigies of the four major immortal sects or Feng Xian, they were all weaker. Yin Ting was the only one who could fight Qinglian's true body head-on, and not be at a disadvantage. Ever since Su Zimo ascended to the upper realm, Qinglian's true body had grown rapidly. She had cultivated a forbidden cultivation technique, like the Prajna Nirvana Sutra, and absorbed supreme treasures like the Sua Luo leaf and the 7 Dawn Ginseng. She had already cultivated to the peak of Stage 9. He was only one step away from advancing to the next level and stepping into rank 10. Even so, Qinglian's true body still could not gain the upper hand. In terms of strength, Yin Ting's physical body was not weaker than his. In terms of battle, Yin Ting also displayed extremely terrifying talent and skills. Yin Ting was only 200 years old. He was too young. His potential was limitless. Su Zimo had been cultivating for more than 2,000 years. While Su Zimo was musing to himself, Yin Ting was even more shocked on the other side. Yin Ting originally thought that the methods that Su Zimo was proficient in should be the heaven-slaying sword art and movement technique. However, he never expected that there would actually be someone in the upper realm who could resist the power of his physical body. From the moment he was born, he was accompanied by strange phenomena. In order to help him temper his muscles and bones, his father had searched for countless natural treasures, elixirs, and miraculous medicines. Just the top body refinement cultivation methods alone, he had cultivated as many as 10. When he was 100 years old, he had fused these 10 body refinement techniques with the human-slaying sword art. Only then was he truly reborn, and his body and bloodline were completed. Even the average Earth immortal could not withstand his sword finger. Yun Ting had never imagined that someone at the same level as him would be able to compete with him. Good, good, good. Yun Ting nodded repeatedly, his face filled with joy. The sword intent in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Su Zimo's aura rose continuously as well. His battle intent rumbled, and his gaze burned like a torch. Such an opponent was rare and neither of them would back down. Yun Ting's appearance triggered the pride in Su Zimo's heart as well. Fight! Almost at the same time, the two of them hollered and clashed once more in a flash. Bang! 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 Clang! Clang! Su Zimo's fists, palms, claws, feet, shoulders, elbows, and knees. Every single part of his body could release extremely terrifying killing moves with unparalleled ferocity. Each time he attacked, it was accompanied by a tragic killing intent. Those techniques were created by Su Zimo, by fusing the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness and the Azure Dragon's combat techniques. They were battle techniques that belonged to him and were suitable for Qinglian's true body. They were shockingly powerful. However, Yun Ting was not weak either. Every single move of his fingers, hair, sleeves and fists could release a sharp glint. No matter how ferocious Su Zimo's attacks were, Yun Ting could neutralize them. The two of them fought in melee combat with speed. They were so entangled that their figures could not be distinguished, and the only thing that could be heard were the sounds of collisions. Melee combat was the most dangerous. However, the two of them had already exchanged hundreds of moves in the span of dozens of breaths. Neither of them could gain the upper hand, and they were in a stalemate. Bang! The two of them clashed head-on once more before retreating and panting slowly. At that moment, the frightening strength of their stamina was revealed. Neither of them were visibly exhausted after the fight. They were merely breathing heavily, and their faces were slightly flushed. You should be proud that you were able to block so many of my moves. Yun Ting raised his head slightly. Use the heaven-slaying sword art. Let me see what level you've cultivated that sword art to. Alright, as you wish. Su Zimo sneered. I'm also interested to see how strong the legendary mortal-slaying sword art is for it to be ranked as the top of the 3 great sword arts. The moment he said that, Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and conjured a sword art with his left hand. Instantly, his aura changed and exuded a cold killing intent. A sky filled with stars appeared above the main hall. However, they lost their trajectories and were in a mess. Yun Ting gazed at the stars above and murmured softly. When a human's killing intent is released, the stars will shift. Not bad, not bad. As he said that, Yun Ting raised his palm slowly as well. A ball of sword light condensed in his palm. If his palm was a part of the world, then this ball of sword light would turn the world upside down. Yun Ting's killing intent intensified. That's the mortal-slaying sword art? Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. Indeed, he could sense a shuddering aura from that ball of sword light, as though it could destroy the world. Yun Ting nodded slightly. That's indeed the mortal-slaying sword art. However, this is not the peak of its power. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Even though it was not the strongest manifestation of the mortal-slaying sword art, he could already sense a tremendous threat and palpitate. Yun Ting paused for a moment before changing the topic. He chuckled and said confidently, however, it's enough to deal with your mortal-slaying sword art. Is that so? Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly as he released the heaven-slaying sword art with all his might. Su Zimo waved his sword finger and instantly, 108,000 sword chi gushed out from his fingertip. They were dense and resplendent, blanketing the skies. His other hand was empty the entire time, and he was prepared. If the heaven-slaying sword art was no match, he would conjure his sword finger and release the earth-slaying sword art. Yun Ting flipped his palm and sent out the sword light in his palm as well. Compared to Su Zimo's 108,000 heaven-slaying sword chi, that ball of sword light seemed much weaker. However, it was filled with a terrifying aura. Once the sword light exploded, it would definitely be earth-shattering. Just as the two sword arts were about to collide, something happened. On the other side, a black figure charged towards Su Zimo at lightning speed with a murderous aura. That figure came from Su Zimo's side and closed in at an extremely fast speed, aiming for Su Zimo's temple. The figure punched viciously with an incomparably ferocious force that tore through the air with a buzzing sound. The timing of that person's attack was perfect. It was the moment when Su Zimo could not spare any attention or energy to deal with other unforeseen events. Duke Yunting, I'm here to lend you a hand and kill that lad. The intruder laughed. His smile that was hidden in the darkness was somewhat menacing. Fang Xian of the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom. Chapter 1994. As Su Zimo and Yunting fought, both of them did not dare to be distracted and went all out. Neither of them noticed that Fang Xian had already charged out of the encirclement of the otherworldly army. Fang Xian was powerful and could definitely be considered as a top monster among the mystic immortals. In fact, he could even fight against Su Zimo and Yunting. Even in a head-on fight, he might not lose to the both of them. However, Fang Xian was scheming and had great plans. In this chaotic situation, he would definitely not choose to fight against Su Zimo and Yunting alone. The best way was to join forces with Yunting. Yunting had a noble status. Apart from his powerful strength, he was a duke. No one knew what other hidden tricks he had up his sleeves. If he joined forces with Yunting and got rid of Su Zimo, he would not have to fear the rest. Even if he could not obtain the Jade Talisman in the end, if he could gain Yunting's favor and become friends with him, the benefits would be unimaginable. As someone who ascended from the lower world, he would not let go of any chance to change his fate. In fact, he would do anything. Therefore, Fang Xian's attack this time round was thunderous and did not give Su Zimo any chance to escape. Although Su Zimo's spirit perception warned him in advance, the pressure and threat from Yunting's attack was too great. The current situation was equivalent to him fighting against two people alone. Furthermore, both of them were top experts of the mystic essence realm. The pressure Su Zimo faced increased exponentially. It had been a long time since he was forced into such a dangerous situation by cultivators of the same cultivation realm. If Su Zimo released all his trump cards, he would naturally be able to resolve this wave of attacks from the two of them. However, he would definitely not be able to hide his true form of Qinglian. As long as he used his blood qi, given Yunting's experience, he would definitely be able to recognize it. However, the situation was critical now. If he did not use his blood qi, or even his bloodline phenomenon, he would definitely be severely injured. Su Zimo had no way out. Instantly, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Thereafter, a look of determination flashed through his eyes as he prepared to attack with all his might. At this moment, there was a slight change in the situation. Fang Xian's sudden appearance not only shocked Su Zimo, but even Yunting was slightly taken aback. Shortly after, Yunting's expression turned furious, and a wisp of killing intent flashed in his eyes. He was too proud and disdained to join hands with others. It was rare to meet an opponent like Su Zimo. If he wanted to win, he would win fair and square. Furthermore, Fang Xian's action was not to team up with him, but a sneak attack. Yunting even felt like he was being used. With his conceit, he would never allow Su Zimo to die in front of him like this. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, Yunting glanced at Su Zimo and sent out a message with his consciousness. The mortal-slaying sword beam that was about to collide with the heaven-slaying sword qi suddenly dissipated, turning into essence qi that dissipated in the hall. Yunting withdrew his attack at the last moment. When two people were fighting, if one of them suddenly retreated while the other didn't, or couldn't stop in time, this action was tantamount to suicide. This choice was too risky. Yunting was equivalent to exposing himself to 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword qi. Just as Yunting dispersed that ball of mortal-slaying sword light, his other hand conjured a sword art. His killing intent was cold as he slashed towards Fang Xian across space. Mortal-slaying sword qi erupted, its edge pointing straight for Fang Xian. You! When Fang Xian detected this scene, he turned pale with fright and was enraged in his heart, secretly cursing a lunatic. He racked his brains and deduced countless possible changes. But he never thought that Yunting would actually make such a choice. On the other side, Yunting's change in move also exceeded Su Zimo's expectations. Originally, He was besieged by two top powerhouses and fell into immense danger, the situation critical. But now, because of Yinting's choice, the situation instantly reversed. On the contrary, it was possible that he would become the biggest winner. As long as he did not pull back, 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword qi would descend. Even if they could not kill Yinting, they could severely injure him. And Yinting had already attacked Fang Xian, the mortal-slaying sword qi erupting. If Su Zimo turned around to deal with Fang Xian again, there was a high chance of severely injuring Fang Xian. With that, he could get rid of his two greatest opponents and threats. Su Zimo did not even look at Fang Xian at the side. He merely looked deeply at Yinting, and similarly chose to pull back with his spirit consciousness, dispersing 108,000 streaks of heaven-slaying sword qi. Yinting was proud and stopped because of that. Su Zimo was a magnanimous person, and would not kick someone when they were down. The two of them had completely different personalities and backgrounds. They had never met before, and were still fighting intensely just now. But at this moment, they had a surprising tacit understanding. Su Zimo's empty palm was originally prepared to condense the earth-slaying sword art. But at this moment, his killing intent was activated. This Fang Xian was way too sinister. He was like a venomous snake hidden in the dark, never knowing when he would sneak out and deal a fatal blow. In a flash, Su Zimo channeled his spirit consciousness, and a gray mist surged in his palm, condensing into a long saber that emitted a shuddering aura. Great divine power, Time Blade. Facing Fang Xian's punch, Su Zimo did not dodge and slashed over with the Time Blade. In the blink of an eye, the situation changed and Fang Xian fell into the encirclement of Su Zimo and Yinting. Indeed, Fang Xian's attack was faster. However, even if he could hit Su Zimo's head, it would be difficult for him to escape from the man-killing sword qi. Trade a life for a life. Fang Xian did not have that boldness. He had transcended the 49 heavenly tribulations and ascended. He did not want to die yet. In a flash, Fang Xian could only retreat. Right then the Time Blade slashed over. Although the gray saber was a little strange, Fang Xian did not feel much of a threat from it. Furthermore, compared to the man-killing sword qi on the other side, the gray saber seemed even more ordinary. Most of Fang Xian's energy was used to deal with the man-killing sword qi. He took a deep breath and condensed at least a dozen small divine powers in front of him. Most of them were defensive divine powers. On the other side, he retreated while waving his sleeves towards the incoming Time Blade. Bang! The saber was easily shattered by him. There was not even a scratch on his sleeves. How could this be? Fang Xian was alerted by the ease with which he dealt with the gray saber. However, it was too late. The power of time had already entered his body. Fang Xian was only about 10,000 years old. For a mystic immortal, who had a lifespan of 100,000 years, he was considered young. However, after being slashed by the Time Blade, his lifespan was reduced by 60,000 years. In the lower realm, the Time Blade could cut off 30,000 years of a person's lifespan. In the upper realm, when it was released with the qi of heaven and earth, its power increased greatly. One slash could cut off 60,000 years of a person's lifespan. Fang Xian was originally a black-robed youth. In the blink of an eye, he had missed his peak, and was now more than 70,000 years old. Fang Xian was right. The Time Blade was indeed not a threat to his life. However, the loss of 60,000 years of lifespan had a huge impact on him. Just this kind of absent-mindedness, the passage of time, the lapse of time, the loss of time, was very difficult to accept in a short period of time. Moreover, Fang Xian, who was more than 70,000 years old, had missed his peak in terms of physical strength, qi, vital spirit, and everything else. He had started to decline. Chapter 1995. Although Su Zimo's slash did not kill Fang Xian directly, it had a huge impact on him. Fang Xian's body swayed slightly. For a moment, the dozens of mystic arts that were condensed before him had many flaws. Affected by the saber of time, his lifespan was reduced by a total of 60,000 years, and his essence spirit was fluctuating violently. It was already extremely rare that the mystic arts did not dissipate on the spot, and it also showed Feng Xian's terrifying control. Even though he was hit by the saber of time, he was still able to calm down immediately and adapt to his current body as much as possible. If it was just the saber of time, it naturally could not threaten Feng Xian. However, just as Feng Xian's lifespan was decreasing, the murderous sword qi descended. Poof, poof, poof. The dozens of mystic arts in front of Feng Xian were shattered one after another, unable to block the murderous power of the murderous sword qi. If Feng Xian had not been hit by the saber of time, the mystic arts that he condensed would not have been so weak. However, after being hit by the saber of time, his essence spirit was unstable, and flaws appeared in the mystic arts. Coupled with the fact that the murderous sword qi was too terrifying and extremely murderous, the mystic arts were all destroyed by the murderous sword qi. The sharpness of the murderous sword qi surged forward and headed straight for Feng Xian, wanting to slay him. Ah! At this critical moment, Feng Xian's expression was menacing as he roared and slashed his left arm with a backhand slap. Exclamation point. Feng Xian's hand slash was also extremely sharp and chopped off his left arm with a single slash. Fresh blood spewed out and floated in the air, condensing without dissipating. It's not that easy to kill me. Feng Xian roared and activated his essence spirit. At the price of losing an arm, he released a mystic art from the divine elephant breath devouring technique. Bam! The severed arm exploded and blood, flesh, and bones gathered in front of Feng Xian, forming a blood-colored elephant tusk that reeked of blood. Under Feng Xian's control, the elephant tusk collided with the murderous sword qi. Clang! Sharp points collided. Neither was willing to give an inch. A sharp, ear-piercing sound rang, as though metal and stone had collided. Crack! 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 Cracks appeared on the blood-colored elephant tusk, and it paused for a moment before exploding. While the heaven-slaying sword qi had also weakened greatly, it still emanated a ghastly killing intent that was sufficient to kill any mystic immortal. Even the secret technique that Feng Xian condensed after severing one of his arms could not withstand a single heaven-slaying sword qi. But it was this delay that gave Feng Xian a rare chance to catch his breath. Voila! Feng Xian activated his bloodline, and the sound of waves could be heard from his body. Immediately after, a huge divine elephant appeared behind Feng Xian. It swung its trunk and roared into the sky. On both sides of the divine elephant's long trunk, there were also 6 gigantic white teeth that were as bright as jade and sharp as blades. This was Feng Xian's bloodline phenomenon, the 6-tusked divine elephant. One of Su Zimo's innate abilities came from the 6-tusked divine elephant. The divine elephant also seemed to feel threatened. It swung its long trunk and whipped it towards the incoming sword light. Puff! The sword light was swift and fierce, cutting the divine elephant's trunk into 2. The human-killing sword qi was too fierce. It pierced through more than 10 of Feng Xian's secret techniques, destroyed the secret technique that Feng Xian condensed from his severed arm, and even shattered Feng Xian's bloodline phenomenon. Of course, after colliding with the bloodline phenomenon, the human-killing sword qi vanished along with its sharpness. Feng Xian clutched his severed arm and retreated, rapidly distancing himself from Su Zimo and Yin Ting. He was overjoyed and his eyes were filled with the excitement of surviving a calamity. That was the combined attack of Su Zimo and Yin Ting. Feng Xian could be proud to be able to escape from their killing moves and preserve his life. In this thatched tomb, there was probably no one else other than Feng Xian who could defend against just now's 2 killing moves. Ha 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 ha! Feng Xian laughed maniacally and shouted, "I told you you can't kill me." Although he had lost an arm this time round, he did not suffer any setbacks after this battle. Instead, he had gained many insights. This was an experience on the brink of death that could not be replicated. When he returned to the Flaming Sun Immortal Kingdom, he would definitely step into the Earth origin stage and become an Earth god. At that time, his lifespan would increase to 200,000 years. The 60,000 years of life that he had lost would not be considered a big deal. An Earth god could regrow a severed limb. He could also regrow this severed arm. To him, This near-death experience was a rare and precious experience in training. As long as he could get out alive, his combat strength would increase significantly. This was a true demon-like talent. In the face of a life-or-death situation, as long as he could survive, he would be able to grow rapidly. Su Zimo looked at Feng Xian indifferently and sighed in his heart. If this person left, he would definitely become a strong enemy and a huge threat to him. However, at this time, he was facing a great enemy and could not split himself to chase after Feng Xian, unless he planned to give the Jade Talisman to Yun Ting. Yun Ting also knew this. He looked at Feng Xian and smiled gently. He said loudly, "You're quite capable to be able to block my human-killing sword qi. I'll spare your life today. Get lost." Hee. Feng Xian smiled coldly. "The two of you, Feng Xian, will remember the kindness of losing my arm and reducing my lifespan. If we meet again in the future, I will definitely thank the both of you." After saying this, Feng Xian was ready to leave. Just now Feng Xian had lost an arm, and his lifespan was greatly reduced. In order to neutralize the human-killing sword qi, he had used up all his trump cards, and could no longer fight for the Jade Talisman. Now, while he still had some energy left, he should withdraw from the battle and escape. Saving his own life was the most important thing. Just as he turned around, a cold light flashed past him. Fast, too fast. He could not react in time. Feng Xian felt a chill in his throat. Following that, a warm and sticky liquid spurted out from his throat. It was bright red. That was his blood. Feng Xian was horrified. He frantically stretched out his hand and covered the wound on his throat. However, the blood continued to flow through the gaps between his fingers. There was no way to stop it. His throat was almost cut off by some unknown sharp weapon. Not far from Feng Xian, a purple figure appeared. Tang Zi was expressionless. She gently swung her hand. Blood dripped from her long and sharp fingernails and returned to their original white color. "You, Fufu." Feng Xian pointed at Tang Zi with a furious expression, as though he wanted to say something. However, he could only make a strange and unclear sound. "You won't be able to escape." Tang Zi flicked her fingernails and said indifferently. Her fingernails retracted into her fingertips slowly, as though they had never appeared. Her fingers were slender and delicate. They did not look like hands that were meant for killing. Gulp, gulp. Feng Xian wanted to speak. However, the moment he opened his mouth, blood flowed from his mouth, and he could not say a single word. The anger in Feng Xian's eyes gradually turned into fear. He could clearly sense that the life in his body was draining. There was no way to stop or reverse it. He realized that he could not survive. Even if his essence spirit could leave his body, he would not be able to hold on for long. A strong sense of indignance surged in his heart. Even after defending against the combined attacks of Su Zimo and Yun Ting, he did not expect that he would not be able to dodge that final fatal blow. Chapter 1996. Feng Xian glared at Tang Zi, his eyes bloodshot. Although he looked weak right now, as long as Tang Zi moved a little closer, he would still be able to launch a final counterattack before his death, before his qi and blood completely declined. However, as a top-notch assassin, Tang Zi was too cautious. She killed with one strike, and did not tangle with Feng Xian. She maintained a relatively safe distance from him. She did not need to do anything else. As long as she looked at Feng Xian and waited patiently, the latter would definitely die. Her sharp nails had lightning hidden on them. Feng Xian's throat could not be healed at all. Feng Xian could only wait for death. Su Zimo looked at this scene and sighed. Feng Xian had taken the initiative to attack Tang Zi before. The two of them fought, but there was no clear winner. Unexpectedly, Feng Xian died in Tang Zi's hands in the end. This was the terror of a top-notch assassin. Of course, Feng Xian's death was not unjust. This was equivalent to Su Zimo, Yun Ting, and Tang Zi, three peerless monsters attacking. In this world, there was probably no mystic immortal who could survive under the joint attack of the three of them. In just a short while, Feng Xian's eyes dimmed, and his face was pale. His body began to sway, and he could not hold on at all. On the top of Feng Xian's head, light flickered, and a primordial spirit left his body. He could only give up his physical body. However, his primordial spirit did not fly far before it was infected by the god's tomb's curse. Its aura weakened, and it became dim, and gradually dissipated. Fang Xian was invincible in the lower realm. He had passed the 49 heavenly tribulations. In terms of talent and potential, he was not inferior to Su Zimo. However, he still died here, and no one would remember him in the future. This was the cruelty of the upper realm. Su Zimo thought of himself because of Fang Xian's background. That was why he had so many emotions. However, Yin Ting's expression was normal. As the county king of the upper realm, although he was very young, he had long been indifferent to such things. Since ancient times, too many monsters like Fang Xian had died. It was as vast as the sea. From Yin Ting's point of view, people who died young were nothing. Only the truly strong could continue to rise and stand tall without falling. Yin Ting stared at Su Zimo and suddenly asked, "Why did you stop just now?" He was asking about the 108,000 strands of heaven-slaying sword qi that Su Zimo had condensed before dispersing. Su Zimo said, "Since you've chosen to change your move, I won't hit you when you're down." Heh. Yin Ting chuckled and raised his brow. "You're thinking too highly of yourself. If I dare to change my move, I'm naturally confident that I can withstand your heaven-slaying sword qi. But you are different from me. Just now, if I didn't change my move, you would be dead." Su Zimo also smiled and said, "You're doing something unnecessary. Even if you don't change your move, I can still escape unscathed from the two of you working together." Although the two of them had temporarily stopped fighting, their words were still tit for tat, neither giving way to the other. Su Zimo's words were not nonsense. Of course, even if he could escape unscathed, he would definitely expose the secret of Qinglian's true identity. Yin Ting pursed his lips and said, "You've already exposed your trump card. That time divine power is indeed not bad. But since I've already seen it and am prepared, it's no threat to me." After pausing for a moment, Yin Ting glanced at Tang Ziyu, who was not far away, and said proudly, "The two of you can come at me together. I'll deal with it alone." Yin Ting was too conceited. He disdained to join forces with others, and he was not afraid of others joining forces to deal with him. Tang Zi was expressionless. To her, there was no such thing as bullying with numbers. To an assassin, she only pursued results. She did not have any psychological burden. Even if Yin Ting did not say anything, she would still find an opportunity to get rid of Yin Ting. At this moment, 4 figures quickly approached and surrounded Tang Zi. The moment Fang Xian died, the 4 prodigies of the 4 major immortal sects had already broken through the encirclement of the army of ghosts. The 4 of them were all extremely intelligent people, and could see the situation clearly. Su Zimo and Yin Ting were like 2 ferocious tigers. The wisest thing for them to do now was to let the 2 tigers fight and kill each other. If the 4 of them could get rid of Tang Zi, who was a hidden danger, they could sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. They could then influence the situation and become the final winners. If Su Zimo and Tang Zi joined forces to kill Yin Ting, the 4 of them might not be able to defeat Su Zimo and Tang Zi. The 4 of them discussed and prepared to join forces to kill Tang Zi first. Tang Zi's expression did not change, but she was slightly shocked. These 4 people were not like the cultivators in the 10 Extremes prison. They were from the 4 major immortal sects, and each of them was more difficult to deal with than the other. If they fought one-on-one, she was confident that she could kill any one of them. Even if she had to fight against 2 of them, she was confident that she would not lose. However, under the siege of these 4 powerhouses, she would not be able to protect herself, let alone assassinate Yin Ting. "Benefactress, don't run around. Why don't you spar with us?" the bald monk said with a smile. He waved his wide sleeves and took the initiative to attack. Then, the man with the iron tower, the middle-aged Taoist priest, and the woman in the blue dress attacked as well. The 4 of them joined forces and unleashed a torrential attack. It was suffocating. Although the situation was critical, Tang Zi did not panic at all. She looked calm as she moved around and fought against the 4 prodigies. On the other side, Yin Ting shook his head slightly and said, "What a pity. This lady can't even protect herself." She can't help you. I alone am enough to defeat you. Su Zimo's eyes brightened, and his aura began to rise. Very well. The sharpness on Yin Ting's body grew stronger. He said slowly, I'd like to see what else you have up your sleeves. Su Zimo formed sword fingers with both hands. He was using two different sword techniques that were filled with terrifying murderous intent. Initially, Su Zimo wanted to hide the earth-slaying sword art as a last resort. However, just now, he did not dare to hold back after witnessing the terror of the human-slaying sword chi, and released the heaven and earth-slaying sword arts at the same time. Above the firmaments, the stars shifted. On the tip of Su Zimo's right hand, 108,000 heaven-slaying sword chi gathered continuously, forming a heaven-slaying sword that was intertwined with sword chi, and had a sharp edge. Su Zimo's left hand moved and the ground trembled, cracking continuously as a gigantic soaring serpent made of sword chi burrowed out. The sky split open, and a gigantic blue dragon popped its head out, glaring at Yin Ting with a murderous aura. Earth-slaying intent, dragon snake rising. The heaven and earth-slaying sword arts were conjured at the same time, and Su Zimo pushed them to their limits. Endless killing intent could be felt in the entire hall, as though it wanted to destroy the world. The four paragons who were attacking Tang Zi were secretly shocked when they saw that. The auras of those two sword arts were way too terrifying. Extreme killing intent. If that was the case for the four paragons who were outside of the battlefield, it was hard to imagine what kind of pressure Yin Ting was under the sharpness of those two sword arts. If the four of them saw Yin Ting's face, they would definitely be shocked. Yin Ting was actually smiling. There was an unconcealable joy and ecstasy in his eyes. Finally, Yin Ting could not hold it in any longer, and reared his head in laughter with an excited expression. Chapter 1997. Yin Ting was elated from the bottom of his heart. The heavenly slaying and earthly slaying were both in the hands of the same person. Furthermore, they appeared before him. This was a gift from the heavens. What was an opportunity? This was it. As long as he defeated Su Zimo, he would be able to obtain the two great sword arts and fuse the three great sword arts. Good, good, good. After laughing, Yin Ting nodded repeatedly. You control the heavenly slaying and earthly slaying. That's the best. With that, I don't have to hold back anymore. I'll let you witness the true power of the human slaying sword art. The stronger Su Zimo was, the more excited Yin Ting was. In his eyes, all of his opponents were his test stones. They would only sharpen his sword Dao and make it unstoppable. You only control one of the three great sword arts. No matter how strong the human slaying sword art is, it can't fight against the heavens. Su Zimo conjured the heavenly slaying and earthly slaying in his hands and smirked coldly at the spirited Yin Ting. Ha 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 ha. Yin Ting stood in the air, surrounded by countless streams of sword chi. His black hair danced as he laughed. Today, I'll tell you why the human slaying sword art is the strongest of the three great sword arts. Even with the hanging sky slaying sword above his head and the soaring serpent and blue dragon glaring at him, Yin Ting's aura was unparalleled and could not be suppressed at all. With every word he said, the sharpness on Yin Ting's body intensified, as though it was going to split the heavens and the void apart. Yin Ting's figure turned blurry and was faintly discernible in midair. Instead, it was replaced by a long sword that was brimming with killing intent. Looking at the current Yin Ting, Su Zimo gradually came to a realization. He finally understood why the heavenly slaying, earthly slaying and human slaying were led by the human slaying sword art. Right then, Yin Ting's voice sounded once more. Although the expert who created this sword art is not someone from the heaven realm, he's still a human. When the heavens release their killing intent, they can shift the stars. When the earth releases its killing intent, dragons and serpents rise. When the human releases his killing intent, he can overturn the heavens and earth. The original intention of this sword art is to use the body of a human to compete with the heavens and earth. Even if the heavens and earth were to be overturned, they would still have to avoid it. By the time Yin Ting finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared completely. Instead, he was replaced by a long sword that seemed capable of ripping the heavens and earth apart. Apart from the killing power of the human slayer sword technique, it also contained an unyielding and sharp sword intent that even the heavens and earth could not suppress. Although the heavenly slaughter and earthly slaughter sword techniques were strong, they were too weak in terms of concept and were perfectly countered by the human slaughter sword technique. The killer of man /forward. Boom. When the three sword arts collided, there was no sound of metal clashing. Instead, there was a loud bang. Ka. Immediately after, a series of cracking sounds could be heard in mid-air. Cracks appeared on the bodies of the heavenly slaughter longsword, soaring serpent and azure dragon. On the other hand, although the radiance on the mortal slayer sword had dimmed significantly, it still exuded an extremely sharp aura that could destroy the world. The human slaughtering sword art was too powerful. Heavenly assassin and earthly assassin working together could not withstand the might of mortal assassin's sword. Swash. Breaking through the encirclement of the heavenly slaughter and earthly slaughter sword techniques, the human slaughtering sword technique tore through the air and slashed down towards Suzimo. Although the entire process seemed slow, it actually happened in the blink of an eye. After destroying the two sword arts, the human slaughtering sword technique did not stop at all and arrived above Suzimo's head without giving him any time to react. At that moment, Yinting was slightly stunned as well. Unknowingly, a gigantic tortoise shell had appeared in front of Suzimo. It was filled with the power of divine powers and shone with spirit light. There were ravines on the tortoise shell that were intricate and mysterious, shining with streaks of light. Innate divine power, spirit tortoise shield. Under normal circumstances, Suzimo would not have the time to activate this innate divine power. However, after he sensed the sword intent contained within the human slaughtering sword technique, he realized that the heavenly slaughter and earthly slaughter sword techniques could not defend against it. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength, verve, and concept. Therefore, after releasing the two sword arts, Suzimo did not stop at all and forcefully activated the spirit tortoise shield. Divine powers such as the heavenly slaughter, earthly slaughter, and spirit tortoise shield were extremely taxing on one's essence spirit. If it was any other mystic immortal, their essence spirit would not be able to withstand releasing those three divine powers in a short period of time, and would collapse on the spot. Thankfully, Suzimo's essence spirit was already at the earth immortal realm. Furthermore, he was Qinglian's essence spirit, and could withstand releasing multiple divine powers in a short period of time. The spirit tortoise shield was the strongest defensive technique in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. As for the human slaughtering sword technique, it was the pinnacle of killing power. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the human slaughtering sword technique landed on the spirit tortoise shield with a deafening bang. The entire hall shook as a result. On the other side of the battlefield, the four paragons and Tang Zi were shocked. The collision of the sword and shield released an incomparably blinding brilliance. The five of them merely glanced at it from afar and felt a piercing pain in their eyes. The four paragons were shocked and relieved at the same time. Fortunately, the four of them did not participate in the battle between the two of them. Otherwise, who would be able to withstand such an attack? The brilliance of the sword and shield instantly engulfed Suzimo and Yinting. The five of them did not even know who had the upper hand in this clash. After a while, the brilliance gradually dissipated and Suzimo and Yinting's figures reappeared. The two of them were still standing in their original positions. The sword and shield had disappeared, and the two of them did not seem to have moved at all. Only those who were still alive in the hall knew how terrifying the battle between the two of them was. It should be a draw. Tang Zi heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was facing four strong opponents, she knew in her heart that the one Suzimo was facing was even more terrifying. Suzimo frowned slightly. The human slaughtering sword technique was much more powerful than he had imagined. Even after being exhausted by the heavenly and earthly slayers, the human slaughtering sword technique was still evenly matched with the spirit turtle shield. This meant that the spirit turtle shield alone would not be able to defend against the sharpness of the human slaughtering sword technique. On the other side, Yinting seemed calm on the surface, but a storm was raging in his heart. His human slaughtering sword technique had failed, and was blocked by someone else. Up till this point of his cultivation, there had not been anyone of the same cultivation realm or secret skill that could defend against the sharpness of the human slaughtering sword technique. Yet, the person before him was completely unharmed against the human slaughtering sword technique. "You've truly surprised me." Yunting composed himself swiftly and spoke slowly. However, after pausing for a moment, Yunting changed the topic. "If that's all you've got, you'll definitely lose today." Confidence was restored in Yunting's eyes as he raised his head proudly. He was not lying. Even if he could not release the human slaughtering sword technique within a short period of time, he still had many powerful trump cards that he could rely on. However, in Yunting's opinion, Su Zimo was at his wit's end. As the Duke of the Celestial Nation, Yunting possessed a noble status and unlimited resources. That was why he had so many powerful methods. At the end of the day, Su Zimo was someone who ascended from the lower world. Without the heavenly and earthly slayers, the tortoise-shell divine powers, and that strange movement technique, what else could he have? Chapter 1998. The situation in the main hall was gradually becoming clearer. Only Su Zimo, Yunting, Fang Xian, Tang Zi, and the prodigies of the four major immortal sects had managed to break out of the encirclement. Now that Fang Xian was dead, only the 7 of them were left to fight for the Jade Talisman. The other cultivators had no chance at all. To be more precise, it was already extremely fortunate that these cultivators were still alive. There were more and more otherworldly soldiers and generals. It was impossible to kill them all. Moreover, the otherworldly soldiers that had awakened were becoming more and more powerful. The arcane immortals in the Emperor's tomb were like vegetables to them. There were more than 10,000 cultivators who had entered the main hall. Now there were less than 1,000 left. The main hall was filled with blood and corpses. Some cultivators who had foresight had already rushed out of the main hall. The otherworldly soldiers and generals seemed to be under some kind of restriction. At the very least, they could not leave the palace. As long as they escaped the palace, they would be able to survive. Below the Jade Talisman, Su Zimo and Yunting were facing each other. The prodigies of the 4 major immortal sects had surrounded Tang Zi. The battle was intense and never stopped. Although the battle between the 5 of them was not as earth-shattering as the battle between Su Zimo and Yunting, it was still dangerous. Tang Zi's best assassination technique could not be used in such a battle. She was surrounded by the 4 prodigies and could not break out at all. Her combat strength was definitely stronger than any of the 4 prodigies. However, the difference between her and the 4 of them was too great. Up until now, Tang Zi had only been relying on her unfathomable movement techniques and her extraordinary battle talent to keep the 4 heavens favorites at bay. Tang Zi had been dodging and defending. She did not counterattack. The 4 prodigies worked together well. Even if one of them revealed an opening, the others would quickly fill in the gaps. If Tang Zi fought back, she would most likely be severely injured. The current situation was a little tricky. Among the 7 of them, Su Zimo and Yunting were definitely stronger in terms of combat strength. However, the 2 of them could start fighting at any time. It might help the others. The situation was changing rapidly. All 7 of them had a chance to take the Jade Talisman. Yunting glanced at the battlefield next to him, then looked at Su Zimo and said slowly, "I must get the Jade Talisman, heavenly kill, and earthly kill. I won't give you another chance." Yunting's expression had been somewhat frivolous when he'd attacked earlier. Only now did he become serious and prepared to hold nothing back. Crash! Waves of energy surged out of Yunting's body, surging violently with a terrifying momentum. Blood like a tide. Clang, clang, clang. Subsequently, waves of sword chi clanging resounded amidst the sound of the ocean waves, and it pierced through metal and cracked rocks while revealing its edge. Su Zimo's expression was grave. Yunting's vitality was too strong. This wasn't just a simple sea of blood. Every drop of blood in Yunting's body contained a sword intent that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Sword blood flowed through Yunting's body. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that a single drop of his blood could kill a 9th-stage mystic immortal. Su Zimo faced off against Yun Ting, and the pressure on him increased exponentially. Waves of blood qi surged through Yun Ting's body and through the layers of space. A series of sword scars appeared on Su Zimo's green robes, and his cheeks hurt from the scratches. Before Yun Ting even attacked, Su Zimo felt as though he was about to be torn apart and drowned by the sword qi just by being exposed to the blood qi. Qinglian's bloodline also became restless when she sensed the blood qi. Su Zimo took a deep breath and suppressed the Qinglian's bloodline in his body. Qinglian was the only creation in the world, and it was of great importance. Back then, it even attracted the immortal kings of the heaven world to attack. Su Zimo didn't dare to be careless. Unless it was a matter of life and death, he would never expose Qinglian's bloodline. You've lost. The moment Su Zimo suppressed his bloodline, Yun Ting sensed it. His eyes shone brightly as he roared and attacked. This was the terror of a top expert. Even the slightest change couldn't escape their senses. Naturally, Su Zimo's aura weakened after suppressing his bloodline. Yun Ting seized the opportunity to burst forth with a ferocious attack. Yun Ting clasped his fingers together and conjured a sword art, as though he was waving two swords with a murderous aura. The moment he attacked, dozens of sword lights enveloped Su Zimo completely. Yun Ting's combat strength increased explosively after his blood qi burst forth, and he was almost in a crushing state. He wanted to suppress Su Zimo with a single move. Su Zimo channeled his essence spirit and let out a deep roar from the depths of his throat as the power of divine power spread from his body. Immediately after, 2 pairs of 4 ivory tusks that were as white as jade grew from his back slowly. Every single tusk was incomparably sharp and emanated a terrifying aura. In fact, a divine elephant could be vaguely seen behind Su Zimo as it reared its head and trumpeted into the skies. Innate divine power, 6 tusks divine power. Prior to this, Su Zimo could only conjure 2 divine elephant tusks when he was still a mystic immortal essence spirit. By the time Su Zimo's essence spirit broke through to the earth essence realm, he could already conjure 4 divine elephant tusks. This meant that Su Zimo's strength had increased by 4 times instantly. Although he did not use his bloodline, Su Zimo's aura had increased explosively and reached a point where he could fight against Yun Ting instantly. Su Zimo attacked with his fists, palms, fingers, claws, knees, and elbows. He counterattacked dozens of times consecutively and defended against the dozens of sword lights around him. Finally, Su Zimo clenched his fists tightly and collided against Yun Ting's sword fingers. Bang! Both parties took a step back. Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his palm. Lowering his head, he saw that his fist was pierced by Yun Ting's sword fingers, and blood was flowing out. However, the wound healed on its own before long, and the bleeding stopped. Yun Ting's blood qi was way too strong. Even though Su Zimo had used his innate divine ability and increased his strength by 4 times, he was still barely on par with Yun Ting. In fact, he was even injured by Yun Ting's sword fingers. Fortunately, Qinglian's true body had an astonishing regeneration ability, and this injury was nothing. In fact, it was not that Qinglian's true body was weaker than Yun Ting's physical body. If Su Zimo had used his bloodline, just now, not only would he be able to suppress Yun Ting in terms of strength, his palm would not be injured as well. Yun Ting frowned. Just now, the exchange of blows had exceeded his expectations once again. With the sharpness of his sword fingers, he could even cut a Khanate mystic grade Dharma treasure in half. However, he had only left 2 wounds on Su Zimo's palm. The strangest thing was that the wounds on Su Zimo's palm had healed in just a few breaths. There was no trace of it at all. This sort of regeneration ability was more than twice as strong as his, and was almost comparable to the regeneration of an Earth Immortal's severed limb. This person was just a cultivator from the lower realm. What kind of body and bloodline did he have to be able to compete with him? The innate divine ability that Su Zimo had used just now also shocked Yun Ting. He had used many of his trump cards, and his combat strength had increased continuously. He had thought that he could easily suppress Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo's upper limit seemed to be limitless. Now he even felt that it was a little tricky. The stronger Su Zimo was, the more excited Yin Ting was. However, if he was so strong that it was beyond his control, he would not be happy. Chapter 1999. Initially, Yin Ting had a thought in his mind. He wanted to take Su Zimo in as his subordinate after suppressing the latter, so that the latter would be of great help to him. But now, he realized that given Su Zimo's methods and talent, there was no way he would submit to someone else. Let's fight. Yin Ting's blood qi rumbled, and his sword qi buzzed as he shouted. Let's see how long you can last against my attacks. His sword finger could penetrate Su Zimo's defense. At the very least, he had the absolute upper hand and the initiative. Furthermore, he had an even stronger trump card that he had yet to use. Once he released that method, even he would not be able to control it. The moment he said that, Yin Ting attacked once more and waved his sword finger, charging towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo was fearless, and leaped into the air with the support of his six fangs divine power to fight Yin Ting. Su Zimo was invincible against those of the same cultivation realm in melee combat, and there was almost no one who could match him. It was not only because of the strength of Qinglian's true body, but also because of his melee combat techniques. There was the ferocity of dragons and elephants, the ferocity of tigers and leopards, the agility of apes and snakes, and the stability of bears and tortoises. Those techniques originated from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. After countless life and death experiences, Su Zimo summarized and reorganized them, fusing them with other advanced combat techniques to form his own unique combat techniques. Those combat techniques were born from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, but were more suitable for Su Zimo than that. However, against Yin Ting, Su Zimo could not gain any advantage in melee combat. Although Yin Ting was restricted by using his fingers as a sword, he could still release countless exquisite sword techniques. Coupled with the sharpness of his sword finger, Yin Ting was still in control of the situation and had the upper hand. Even so, the more Yin Ting fought, the more shocked he became. What sort of sword techniques was this guy cultivating? Those sword techniques were created by many senior sword cultivators of the upper world after countless years of comprehension. Combined with his sword blood, his talent in the way of the sword, the same sword technique, when released in his hands, would be much more powerful. However, no matter how ferocious his attacks were, they were neutralized by Su Zimo's combat techniques one after another. He had never seen any of the combat techniques that Su Zimo used before. At times, when Su Zimo attacked, it was as though he was possessed by a true dragon, and his strength was unparalleled. However, in the blink of an eye, his aura in the blink of an eye, he was agile like an ape. Even the sharp sword finger that he relied on the most did not have much of an impact on Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, a few hundred moves was a lot. There were dozens of wounds on Su Zimo's body from his sword fingers. However, Su Zimo's recovery, even in such an intense battle, Su Zimo's wounds healed quickly and did not lose much blood qi. On the contrary, if his attacks weakened slightly, Su Zimo would definitely counterattack fiercely. There were a few times when he was almost caught by Su Zimo's palm. Su Zimo's fingernails were sharp like a tiger's claws. If they landed on Yin Ting's body, there would be 5 bloody wounds. As time passed, Yin Ting's heart became more and more irritated. Although he was more than 200 years old, he was still too young for the upper realm. He had abundant cultivation resources, shocking talent, a strong background, and a noble status. However, he was too young, and his state of mind was much weaker. Yin Ting had been in countless battles since he started cultivating, and had met many prodigies. When had he ever been dragged to this point? Su Zimo, on the other hand, was unusually calm. He was neither anxious nor impatient, and his eyes were as calm as an ancient well. His spirit sense had even sensed Yin Ting's impetuousness. If one's state of mind was unstable, they would definitely reveal some flaws. Yin Ting's state of mind wavered slightly, and the sharpness of his sword fingers merely trembled slightly. Su Zimo sensed it, and his eyes shone brightly as he counterattacked. "You're still young," Su Zimo said indifferently. Those changes were too subtle and could not even be considered as flaws. However, that was enough for Su Zimo. Clang, clang. A series of metal clashing sounds could be heard. Su Zimo's fingernails collided with Yin Ting's sword fingers, and sparks flew everywhere. Su Zimo's fingernails were cut off by Yin Ting's sword fingers. Su Zimo's other palm seized the opportunity and pierced through the layers of sword shadows, pressing heavily on Yin Ting's chest. Bang! That was the great Chaos Essence palm. Su Zimo did not hold back. Su Zimo pressed his palm down and frowned slightly. His palm did not land on flesh and blood. Instead, it was cold to the touch and exuded a chilling intent. The moment his palm landed, the clothes on Yin Ting's chest were instantly shredded, revealing a shiny inner armor underneath. Thud, 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 thud. Yin Ting retreated continuously and left a deep footprint on the ground with every step he took. Crack, crack, crack. A cracking sound could be heard from Yin Ting's chest. He lowered his head and could not help but be startled. There was a layer of ice on the surface of his inner armor. At that moment, a gigantic palm print appeared on the layer of ice. Cracks appeared on the layer of ice around the palm print and gradually spread. The armor on Yin Ting's body was the Ice Spirit Silver armor that was personally refined by his sister as a gift. The layer of ice on the Ice Spirit Silver armor had a strong defensive power. Even an ordinary low-level Earth immortal might not be able to shatter it with his full strength. But now, it was shattered by Su Zimo with a single palm strike. Although Yin Ting was unscathed with the protection of the Ice Spirit Silver armor, he still felt a little suffocated in his chest. That was how terrifying the power of Su Zimo's palm strike was. Seeing this, Su Zimo sighed inwardly. What a pity. If it were not for the silver inner armor, he would have been able to severely injure Yin Ting. For someone of Yin Ting's status, he would have countless treasures and life-saving means on him. Bitch, how dare you? Suddenly a shrill, hurried and terrified scream came from the side. Su Zimo was still mostly focused on Yin Ting. At the same time, he turned his head slightly and looked in the direction of the voice. On the other side of the battlefield, the situation had changed drastically. The lady in blue, one of the 4 outstanding prodigies, felt a sense of danger. She quickly retreated, as if she wanted to leave the battlefield. However, Tang Zi's figure appeared behind her. She reached out her hand and grabbed the top of her head. Her speed was so fast that there was no way for her to dodge. At that moment, the bald monk and the man with the iron tower were too far away to help. The only one who could help was the middle-aged Taoist priest. A cold light flashed in the middle-aged Taoist priest's eyes. Without hesitation, he swung his sleeves and hit the back of Tang Zi's head and back. Tang Zi could feel the attack coming from behind. However, she remained expressionless and did not stop. She had to kill the lady in blue. She had been waiting for this opportunity for too long. If this continued, she would be exhausted to death by the 4 outstanding prodigies. Now only the middle-aged Taoist priest could help her. She was confident that she could survive. Tang Zi's sharp fingernails landed on the lady in blue's head. It only paused for a moment before it pierced through her skull. The lightning in her fingertips instantly destroyed the primordial spirit of the lady in blue. As a top-notch assassin, Tang Zi always killed when she attacked. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.